Military?
No, National Park. But it's cool.
We started doing that in the
No
college.
military, yeah. No, not,
Of course.
I have a military name, but not a military.
Background?
Navy.
Yeah, Navy. That's military.
Well, yeah, it's one of them.
One of them, one of the branches.
One of the branches.
All right, it is 5:30, isn't it? Sorry, John.
Hey, Dan.
That was a quick, not a lot of in between there.
All right.
No.
Yeah, I
Well,
suppose.
we spent
Yeah, I
some
know
time.
that. Well, first of all.
Very busy.
Just the.
We should. We were cold.
I'm over it. It's okay.
I'd like to move it up.
There's just so much stuff
I'm
going
not sure
on.
if we could move it up to here, or can we move it up to even there?
That's right. Well, we were waiting for your coffee.
How are you guys doing?
It's down here.
Look, I can touch you.
Good to hear.
We can touch each other.
Old business and new business.
Okay. Well, I want to move it like
other
after,
guy.
at least after reports.
guy?
It doesn't,
The other guy.
I
You
don't,
should see the other guy.
Yeah.
we'll try our best.
I can't understand this.
I turned the heat up here. If it gets too hot, let me know. Let me know.
Okay, I'd like to call the Tuesday, March 1st, 2022 East Bay Charter Township Planning Commission meeting to order. And let us start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, roll call. Leslie?
Certainly. Edley,
Here.
Bartlett,
Yes,
Ferguson.
he's in Florida.
Oh, that's right. Gonzalez,
Here.
Nimitz,
Here.
Leonard,
Here.
Syke.
Here. We have an agenda for this evening's meeting. There is also, would like to review for any conflict of interest, so if anybody has any conflict, please let us know. Also, there's the approval of the agenda. We do have one item on the agenda that was scheduled to be here based on the last meeting, and that's the GO-REC PUD, but that is now going to be transferred or rescheduled for a special meeting noticed for March 24th, 2022. I would be interested in possibly moving that further up on the agenda so we can just get that out of the way. I'm not sure exactly where the appropriate, perhaps after reports might be a more appropriate, or I don't know if we can do it even, I don't know if it makes any sense to maybe even have it sooner than that. But anyways, I'd enter any,
Could we move it to just A and then move everybody else down a letter?
sure, that would be fine. So it'd be 9A. So 9E would move to 9A, and the rest would then follow suit after that.
Need a
Okay.
motion?
I'll move that, we move it to 9A from, we'll move 9E to 9A.
And you approve the rest of the agenda?
Oh, do you want me to do one motion, one full motion? All right, and then I'll approve the March 1, 2022 agenda.
I'll support.
Okay, we got a motion and a second to approve the agenda with that amendment to moving the GO-REC up to 9A and the rest following after that. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Next we have is the meeting minutes for the regular meeting of February 4th, 2022, which also includes site visit minutes as well. You had a chance to review those?
Just a couple of things. I did spell Renee's name wrong, and I apologize for that. So that, if that could be corrected, that would be great on both those, and I'm sorry, Renee.
All right.
And then, I don't know if we want to make note, if that's necessary, that Chairman Syke, I had several questions, and he asked me to submit those to Sarah, and that's not noted in the minutes, do we need to do that?
That would be, so that would have been under,
At the end, yeah, right before adjournment, I would assume, or, let's see where we were. Questions on GORAC, hang on.
that would have been part of the actual GOREC application.
Yeah, right. Like it,
Well, it could be part of the board consensus and postponement.
probably right after where it talked about, would it have been after public comment?
Under the second public comment, so,
Well, when you ask questions about from the board, and that's not noted in.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not
Okay.
noted in here either. Maybe you want to just say that and.
so that would be under, after D then. I mean,
I thought that.
I mean, it was towards-
If I watched the video, you asked for information from the board prior to public. I thought then to the comment, but I can't recall exactly. I don't know. We can watch the video. But I
Can you
remember I was
submit-
asked to submit questions by Chairman Syke to Sarah. And
Can you
I think
submit it to
That
him?
should be noted. Pardon?
Did you submit it to them?
I sure did.
Does it need to be in here?
yeah, well, if it was stated, and I think it'd be appropriate,
Okay.
because I'd understand where those came from. I would say that would be after that paragraph and after 9D, because I think it was part of that right before the public comment. I don't think it was that, yeah.
I do too.
So you could say something to the effect that Chair Syke requested any public, or any planning commission comments be directed to staff. Something like that.
Where do you want
Good
it?
enough.
After the paragraph before the
Chair
public
slide.
hearing,
Okay.
right?
Right.
Well, it was public comment, yes.
Yeah.
So it'd be that, right, that, under 9D, there's that paragraph that starts with Sarah Keever. Right after that, like add
Okay.
a sentence after that.
Thank you.
Any other comments or concerns about the minutes for the site visits as well as the regular meeting? And actually, our agenda says February 4th, but it is the February 1st meeting minutes that we're reviewing. I'd entertain a motion for these minutes.
So I make a motion to approve the February 1st regular meeting minutes with the addition of the sentence about sending questions to Sarah and the site visit minutes
Correction.
of February 1st with Renee's name corrected.
Second.
Okay, got a motion to approve the minutes with the changes and a second as well. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign? Okay, hearing none, that motion carries. So, next item we have on the agenda is public comment or on any topic other than agenda items. And we are instituting kind of, the township does have some public hearing procedures and public comment procedures that were established quite some time ago, but we do have some clarification on those. And Leslie, if you could, just for the benefit of everybody, since this is kind of new, if you could just read those and
Okay.
how we'll manage the public comment periods.
Okay. The purpose of the public comment is to give members of the public an opportunity to express their views and opinions to the members of this commission. To maintain order and ensure fairness to every speaker, the following rules must be followed during public comment. Speakers will approach the podium and introduce themselves by stating their name and address, and then proceed to make their comment. Each speaker will be limited to 3 minutes and is only allowed to speak once on the same matter. Communication previously mailed to the commission is not necessary to read out loud. Public comment time may not be given to another member of the public. Any arrangement for speaking on behalf of others must be arranged prior to the meeting. When your time is at 2 minutes, 30 seconds, you will be alerted with a yellow signal to wrap up your comment. And at 3 minutes, you'll be alerted with a red signal, and the chair will ask you to conclude your comments. Low tech here.
That's like getting a yellow card in soccer.
Okay,
It's like soccer.
It is, yeah. Nobody's touching anybody.
thank you, Leslie. So this is for public comment on any topic other than the agenda items, and just for the benefit of everybody here, if you are interested in GoRec, to let you know that that is going to be tabled and placed on a special meeting for Thursday, March 24th. So with that, I'd like to open the public comment, if anybody has any comments they'd like to make.
Good evening. My name is Carol Kusel. I'm an East Bay Township resident and property owner. I want to take a moment to say welcome back, Claire. You mentioned that GoRec is postponed to the 24th, and I'm hoping I have some generic topics to talk about or to share with just a little bit of segue to GoRec. Is that acceptable?
Sure.
Thank you. It's our duty as concerned citizens to communicate our concerns to you, the planning commissioners. In turn, it is the responsibility of the planning commissioners to listen to us during the meetings and to read our communications. Over the last year or so, there has been an increase in citizen participation during the PC meetings. I believe this is a reflection of the types and the complexities of the PUDs and the special land uses and the impacts that they may have on the citizens' health, safety, and welfare. It is also because citizens realize that once passed, these proposals stay with the property, and they set precedent. They set precedent, giving others the impetus to make similar requests and/or ask for other ways to make the township's ordinances more flexible for their needs. Citizens' comment is also at times driven by inconsistencies in enforcement over the years. Please listen and consider the perspectives of our township citizens over those citizens from elsewhere or from people who represent citizens from elsewhere. After all, you were appointed to represent our township citizens. On March 24th, the GoRec PUD will be addressed in a special meeting. As you're aware, hundreds of concerned citizens have signed petitions, written letters, packed PC meetings to convey their concerns of adverse economic, social, and environmental impacts on the protected forest lakes. Consider the multiple existing facilities that may use the precedent of passing that PUD in going forward. Consider the camps that are already on Arbutus Lake. Consider the multiple cabin courts that are on Spider Lake and perhaps elsewhere who are already holding some special events. And consider the short-term rentals that are probably on all of the lakes in the Forest Lakes area. The provision for flexibility through the PUD does not override or negate the original ordinance and must be consistent with the intent of the township ordinances. The wishes of a nonprofit organization should not supersede the voice of the citizens regarding adverse economic and social or environmental impacts. In conclusion, I see the red. I don't know when that started with my question. I know I am not alone in my gratitude for your work as planning commissioners. The agendas are jammed, the agenda packets are huge, and the meetings are long. But please be reminded that your decisions will be long-lasting and set precedent for other decisions and requests. Thank you for listening and considering the concerns of all of the citizens of the Forest Lakes region.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Linda Deneen, East Bay Township resident and Spider Lake property owner. And I'm just sharing with you this evening, I shouldn't say just, because it's a really nice thing. And in my view, and Leslie asked for views to be shared with the public, with the Planning Commission. In my view, we should recognize people when they do good things. Excuse me. And I'd like to share with you this evening that one of our members here this evening has been recognized by the Michigan Lakes and Stream Association as Riparian of the Year for Michigan, and that will extend throughout this year until May, if that's correct. And it is, so through May. And that person would be Carol Kusel, who was just here. So I just wanted to share that good news with you, and I think we need some good news once in a while. So I congratulate Carol. She's done a fantastic job, not only for us, but for
Thank you. And congratulations. Any other comments? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on. Next is correspondence, and most of it's all been submitted through the emails, but we do have some items on our agenda, so those are all related to some of the reviews that were released, so we'll have those mentioned at that juncture, I guess. Okay. Okay, so then we have reports, starting with Town Board. Tracy?
Yeah, sorry, I did not prepare. Let's see, we are getting ready to start working on our audit. Just did tax settlement, and Sue and Holly are working on election stuff. Evidently, there's a lot of changes coming in 2023 for elections, but other than that, I can't even remember what was on our last board meeting. I'm sorry. So, other than that, things are going good.
Okay, good, thank you. Zoning Board of Appeals.
We
Paul?
had no issues before the zoning board.
Okay, all right. And then Planning and Zoning Department, I want to welcome back Claire. And also I want to thank for Everett, Leslie, and Sarah, and Preston, and who've all been really working hard over the last few months and keeping everything running very smoothly. We really appreciate all their efforts.
Yes, I would echo those thanks. So it's good to be back. Just wanted to quickly mention that I'm hoping to have a master plan draft for the Planning Commission to review within the next month and a half. So we've got that in pretty good shape. It's in the review phase, and working with LIAA on the kind of layout and design of it. So we'll be picking up some most likely work sessions on the master plan, probably just a couple of them to get it out for public review. But I don't anticipate it being a lot more work for the Planning Commission. So thanks for working on that for the past year. And I did want to just mention, I found there was a letter noting that Peninsula Township has a master plan that's available and ready for public review. That letter was sent a couple months ago. So I apologize, but it is on their website. It looks good. So if anyone wants to take a look at that master plan. And if Leslie or Preston want to fill in anything else that's going on in the department, but I think that's it for now. Thank you.
I would echo that. Okay, thank you. Moving on, business before the Planning Commission. We have SPR 12-21 special land use, 4-21 Go Rec PUD. And plan to be tabled and scheduled for a meeting on March 24th.
If we make a motion to table, then is there discussion on that, or no? When do you want? any discussion?
Well, I don't think we anticipate any discussion.
Okay, well, I have a question then.
Okay, that's fine.
I did submit additional questions on 117 and 27 to the staff, and I'm wondering where that is in the status update.
That's something I did send them off to Peter to get his input on a couple of the items, but it will be, I can give that to you for the 24th meeting.
Not
with that
before?
information. Well, I guess I can respond to you, yeah, directly. I guess I was thinking it was a part of, the whole planning commission was getting the questions, so the answer would come along with the packet. But I can respond back to you.
Well, it's up to you. Do you want to respond then? Because if you respond, there will be additional questions, I'm sure, to clarify and things like that. Whatever way you want to handle it. I just, thought about expediting so that we all could be prepared a little, and maybe in the essence of time. However, if you want to, it's up to you which way you want to do it. But I know that I'll probably have like a part A, a part B, and a part C, so I'm going to let you know that.
Well, and I guess it would be up to the planning commission, because, it was forwarded to the planning commission,
Right.
your questions at your request, but then my personal preference is not to continue to, because I feel like if you send it to the planning commission, I need to send all the answers back to the planning commission, and then that's in between your packet, and we need to keep record of everything, so whatever the planning commission wants me to do with it, give me some direction, I guess.
Well, I think you can have some follow-up conversation, but I'd like to have that more kind of directed back to the planning commission, just so we're aware of what the response is. So once you get the responses, you can, maybe convey that and let Judy know, but I don't want like a kind of a discourse going
The
on.
packet, that's all I'm asking.
Yeah, I think that's what she was talking about.
Okay, then we'll
yeah.
have it a week in advance.
Yeah.
Okay, all right,
Yeah.
I'm good with that.
And then if there's follow-up from that
Yeah.
point, I'd rather have that, because then that, like Sarah said, that way we're all in that
I just
conversation.
didn't want the responses totally that night, because then it doesn't give us time to really kind of vet things or really clarify the communication. So, yeah, if it's in the packet, I'm good with that.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
Then I'll make a motion to table SPR 1221, SLU 421, GO-REC PUD to the meeting on Thursday, March 24 at 6:30 PM.
What was it
One more meeting?
noticed for? Was
It was noticed for 5:30.
It was noticed
5:30.
at 5:30? All right, thank you. I'll write that on the agenda.
Okay, we have a motion to table
Support.
A second.
and support. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that item is tabled for March 24th at 5:30 PM in this room. Moving on, we have the zoning amendment 1-22, combination of uses for discussion and schedule of public hearing. So you have the revised text that would be amending the zoning ordinance for combination of uses. And if anybody had any comments or questions?
Can I just make one comment?
Oh, sure.
About it? So I worked on, my memo is pretty short for that, in trying to find a good square foot requirement. My initial reaction is to just not put anything in there at all, and just go by what the state minimum would be, which is the 120 square feet. But I didn't know if the planning commission wanted to go that far. I know Dan had brought up some square footages that he's dealt with. Yeah, or like 350, 320, I think, for some of the smallest.
Like smallest was like 325,
Yeah.
like smallest.
So, 120 is really not realistic, but
Closet.
I didn't know how far the planning commission wanted to go. So I stopped at the 400, but I wanted to mention that too, if, if you're going, oh, do we really care what the minimum is for just multifamily, is what you're dealing with. It's not your single family. You could just go back down to the state minimum, so.
And in the local business, that's 1, is that, did we change that to 8, or is that 1 to 8, or, I can't really tell what that is in the reg.
Oh, that is 8.
8.
It was 1, I crossed it out and made it.
Oh, okay, thanks.
And that's what it was when we looked at it originally, I think. So with the change in square footage, would that increase?
You know, you could increase it. It was just the same that was in the EBC district there, the
Okay.
Corners district, so,
I just didn't know if that density was based on square footage, you know, how many units you could get square footage-wise on a property.
Any other comments or questions?
Are you saying that on the matrix that we have here, you wanted to eliminate that or keep it at 400?
no, all of the districts would go to 400, some from the 576, and then, I'm trying to think of what the change was for the LB district there, because that was an NA. So I'm wondering, maybe we added it to that district, that's why we added the multifamily and it wasn't previously there.
Correct.
So that's why that was crossed out, but, I mean, all the districts would be consistent in going to 400 from 576.
The ones in red.
The ones in
Ones in
red,
red,
right.
yeah.
Yeah, and there is a couple of other places in the ordinance that we need to go back and make sure in each of the districts to pull out and change that language, but before we spend time going through and making all those changes for the public hearing notice, we want to make sure you guys are okay with it, and then we can go through and find all of the spots in the ordinance
Yeah.
that need to be updated.
Well, I think what you have here is fine.
When, in the chart, when we have combination of uses and it says R/, special land use, is it both, use by right and special land use, or is it just one?
Yeah, it depends on the use and what's involved with that. I don't know. Claire, you probably can speak to it a little bit more, how how
Combinations.
you've processed them in the past.
Yeah, if it's 2 uses that are both use by right, you'd process as a use by right. If it's, you know, if one is special land use, then you'd process it as
Yeah.
special land use.
Okay, now I understand, thank you.
I did notice that East Bay Corners only says special land use, there's no use by right, and I wasn't sure what the reason for that was. Not sure how long that's been that way, but the combination of uses only allows a special land use permit for East Bay Corners.
Did we might have done that a while back because they were talking about formed-based planning, and so that under a special land use, we might be able to have some conditions like a PUD and have it be a little bit more formed-based. So that was, I believe that was the history on it. Leslie, do you recall that? When Tubbs was
No.
talking about EBC?
I would actually look and see in that district if there are uses by right, and there are, so I think that R should be in front of that.
Rather than special land?
Yeah, it should, I think it's both.
Okay, any other comments or questions regarding the proposed text amendment? So this would be for scheduling a public hearing that would happen at our regular meeting in April. Entertain a motion.
I would move to set this for, table number, dimensional requirements, table number 2, changes for public hearing for, would it be April 7th, is that what
Or eight.
I'm?
Yes.
Oh, it is the 5th, yeah.
Okay, April 5. Is that far enough out? Okay.
And that's more than actually table number 2, just for clarification.
Oh, it
So
is?
Well, there's a couple of tables.
And-
Yeah, I would just say as presented here in the packet, is what so that will all be noticed for public hearing.
Land use table.
And that's a public hearing by the Planning Commission, and then that will have to go to Town Board for consideration. Okay, I had a motion. Did I get a second? You supported? Okay, Tracy. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries, so that public hearing will get scheduled for April 5th. Moving on, we have our next item of business is SPR 1-22, Special Land Use 1-22 Raymond Farm Wedding Venue for public hearing, discussion, and possible action. So before we go into the public hearing, staff, do you want to review some of the comments here or report?
Yeah, so there's a staff report in your packet, and there were a couple of outstanding items which are on your desk tonight. So one has to do with the lighting, so they did provide some lighting details that are on your desk for a solar light they would like to provide. The locations are in the packet on the site plan to show where they'd like to put them, but this is the detail for them. And then the plantings, they did provide those additional plantings, as I think Tracy had mentioned at last month's meeting. There's not a lot of detail in there. I don't know if the email that they sent over with those additional details, if you have a copy of that, but they said that they would fill in the holes that are along that property line, but I think that would be a topic for discussion at tonight's meeting, what that looks like, to make sure everybody knows exactly what's expected and what, you know, from the applicant and from the planning commission from that. And I did let them know about the conditions, specifically about, you know, there's no tent, which is not, you know, it's not on the plan anyways, no amplified sound, and that everything must happen inside the barn. That wasn't really discussed at the last meeting. The tent was, but the other two items, the planning commission didn't talk about. So it was something I thought of when I was kind of doing my review and some of the issues I've seen with kind of.
Yeah, I made a note about the music, so.
Yeah, so, and the applicant can speak to that a little bit, but they didn't have any issues with those as either. So kind of a starting point with some findings in here. So I did, you know, with the additional information, I think that wouldn't change any really of the findings. I think they were all satisfied in here as proposed, but definitely any input from the planning commission for that, or if there's any additional conditions.
And just to clarify, when you mentioned no amplified sound, that's both inside and outside?
To me, that means, yeah, anywhere on the property.
Okay.
If you want to clarify that, though, would that definitely, I mean,
Right.
the more detail we can provide for enforcement.
The better.
Yep, exactly.
Yep.
And they did propose, did I put the number of events? that
Yeah,
they-
12.
Yes.
Okay, was that
Which I
a,
thought was more than what we talked about.
Yes.
it is, that's different. They had talked about 4 or 5,
Yeah.
but they may be able to help explain that. But they did provide, those are the hours they provided to the 4 to 11. You know, the planning commission asked for that information. So definitely, those are some new items
Right.
for tonight's meeting.
Okay. Is the applicant here? Okay, yeah, if you want to come up to the podium before we go to public hearing, if you have any comments you wanted to make about the proposed project?
Yes, just to reintroduce myself, Shane Gamrat with Gordy Frazier. You know, I think she kind of touched on everything. The one thing with the landscaping, we didn't have a full tree survey done over along that property line. You know, there are a couple gaps in the existing evergreen trees that are over there that we'd like to fill in. That's kind of why we put in there, just a general fill in the holes kind of planning. And then as far as the number of weddings per year, you know, I think we talked about 4 or 5, and then talking with Sue, she was hoping to do 12. I guess that'd be kind of up for negotiations between you guys and us, but that's kind of where we're at with that. We'd like to talk about it, and ideally, we would do a little more, just because, 4 is, one a month in the summer, basically, when, if you do up to 12, that gives you a full summer worth of weddings, maybe some in the spring, but again, that's all negotiable. So that's kind of where we stand. I think we touched on everything that was brought up at the last meeting. There was only a couple minor things, so I think that should be everything.
Okay. All right. So why don't we go ahead with unless there's any other comments, we'll go ahead with the public hearing. And we'll use the same requirements as the public comment. So let's open the public hearing at 6:08 PM. So if anybody has any comments regarding, this is for the SPR 1-22, SLU 1-22 Raymond Farm Wedding Venue, if you want to come forward.
Hi, Gerald Overmeyer. We own the property adjacent to the property requesting the venue. Here on behalf of my mother to my wife Rose, 1132 Smith Road. It's my first time, I'm nervous. Bear with me.
You're all good.
The property in question was my mother's farm. She's 50 years in the family. When Sue bought it, we were pleased that she had the means. Remodeled the house, landscaping, new garage, refaced the barn. Looks beautiful. There's no ill will towards Sue whatsoever. This proposal is preposterous. It is a noise nightmare. We're talking about 300 people. We're talking about a parking lot that fits 150 cars. This venue is 300 feet from my mother's backyard. This parking lot is 200 feet from my mother's backyard. It is a noise nightmare. You know what parking lots do? People get out of their car, slam the door, beep, beep. They come out of the venue, beep, beep, open it up, slam the door. You got caterers. You got cleanup crews, food. Those trucks all have the beep, 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 beep backers on them. Gonna be in and out of there. This traffic might be 1% on Hammond, might be 1%, 2%, 3% on 3 Mile. We're talking about Smith Road. Smith Road will be a 500 increase in traffic. And now we're talking about a little road that goes 75 feet from my mother's front porch. And that's going to be 1,000% increase in traffic. And it's a dirt road. Every car that passes that road, because there's no signage, it's going to turn around in her driveway, the next driveway. Every car that catches that road means there's going to have to be a big-ass sign out in front that everybody will have to look at that goes down Hammond Road. The traffic will come in Carlisle, out Smith. It'll create, in our opinion, way too much noise for this rural residential area. Changing this to commercial is a horrible idea, because once this zoning is passed as commercial, these planners, these people that are telling you what they want, what they're going to do, they're going to be right back here for 4, and then they want 12, and then they want 24, and then they want 500 people instead of 3, and then they want a 300 parking lot instead of 150. You said no amplified sound? 150 to 300 people sound is a drone that sounds like a vacuum cleaner in your backyard. In these 12 venues, he said it himself, it's all summer long. In northern Michigan, you got about 14 Saturdays to enjoy. Summers are short. And that's every Saturday night in the summer, June, July, and August. You got a venue 300 feet from a backyard with 300 people talking over each other, making noise. Alcohol, loud, belligerent people. These people aren't from East Bay Township. These people are going to come in from cities, big cities, all over Michigan, all over the United States. Everyone here's flown to a wedding somewhere. These people don't respect East Bay Township's privacy and rural, residential, quiet backyard Saturday evenings when the crickets start chirping at dusk. This is going to ruin it. It's going to ruin everything for a quarter-mile radius around this. There's no more privacy. This road, 75 feet from the front porch, these people coming into these venues, they don't respect that. They
Sir,
don't respect someone sitting on the porch.
could you wrap up, please?
Can I have my mom's 3 minutes? Seems how she's handicapped.
Well, if you could just wrap up another
All
minute
right,
or so.
I'll wrap up. Once this zoning is approved, there's no turning back. That means it sets precedent for another venue, just like it, in a residential or rural neighborhood. And they can tell you all they want about what they want and how many people and how many this, but once it's zoned, they can do whatever they want. And you end up having to call the cops. And nobody wants that. We don't have the means to fight this. Our only means are today, here, speaking out about this noise. And if there's any bands or any DJs, it's gone. Our privacy and our quiet Saturday evenings every weekend of the summer is gone. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other comments on the public hearing?
Good evening. My name is Lisa Farland. I reside part-time at 5832 Rennie View. And it just occurs to me, and I'm sure it's occurring to you and every person in this room, that this is a repeat conversation that you're hearing from different concerned citizens regarding event facilities in inappropriate areas, whether it be this gentleman and his mother in a residential zoned area, or it be a group of people that live on a lake, and you're considering an event facility in an area that is not zoned for an event facility. So I would just ask you to think about that. What he said times, I don't know, 30, 40 for what you're going to be discussing on March 24th. So I just want you to think about that. He's worried for his mother's peace. She's, 100 feet away from it. Put it on top of a hill across the lake, and now think of what that sounds like and feels like. So I'd just like you to consider, you're not just hearing it from one. Maybe it's a discussion about where a commercial business should be located, because an event center is a commercial business. It's not a nature preserve. It's not outdoor recreation. It's a commercial business. So it just seems like maybe you want to look at it from a different perspective regarding event facilities across the board, because they're in huge demand. And what you do for one, you're going to do for another, another, another. So there's plenty of commercial industrial areas that would be really well-suited, and you could be so respectful to your residents and your environment, I'd really ask you to consider that. Thank you.
Thank you. Sure.
Gary Cox, 3 Mile Road. I'm concerned about the traffic, and I don't know if anybody's come off of 3 or off of Smith Road onto 3 Mile, but it's a dangerous intersection. People coming over the hill from the south, and then you mix alcohol with it. This could be a bloody place. And if they go the other way down Carlisle Road, they still got to make a left, and that's a bad intersection also onto Hammond Road. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? One more chance. Okay, not hearing any more, we'll close the public hearing at 6:19 PM. And we'll bring it back to the Planning Commission for a discussion. Why don't we start with Paul, if you got any comments?
Yeah, come back to me, but my concern right now was going from originally like 4 events to now 12, and I'll leave it at that at this point.
That's it? Okay. Renee?
I feel like in respect to that, that maybe, if I remember right, that came up at the site review, that when she asked about, she said she wanted to do maybe only 3 or 4. I think that we talked about potentially putting on the application more, because otherwise you'd have to come back. So am I remembering that correctly?
Right, she said she wanted to try it out.
Right,
for a
right,
season or so and
right.
see, and then she'd come back.
Right. So I think that might be how that came about. That's my 2 cents. I just have a couple of questions about the waivers requested as one of the newbies. Location and nature of fences, landscaping, screening, number 16, the site plan shall include a written landscape plan. I guess I'm just, and then there's more on the next page about off-street parking waiver requested. I guess I'd like a little more explanation on that, possibly.
Yeah, those were, the parking and the landscaping were 2 items that the applicant had asked to basically be waived or not have to comply with, because it is kind of a agricultural area, or that's what the property currently is, and because of the limited number they wanted to have there. Some of that landscaping, was discussed at last month's meeting for the parking, to try to protect the neighbor that's on the east side there, that they added on. The parking is, because it's grass, it's not going to be gravel or asphalt. The ordinance does allow the planning commission to consider that and allow for that type of surface, if you'd like to, for the use. So they are asking, I guess, for the planning commission to consider that in addition to for their parking. So those were the 2 I think I recall for. There was, I guess, in the parking standards, which it's on page 31 of your packet, there's a couple of items there that talk about the waivers. So one talks about the fencing, to not have to do that fencing requirement. If you could refrain from speaking in the audience, it's distracting. Then to not do the fencing because of the location and kind of the limited timing that it would be used. I guess I shouldn't speak fully on behalf of the applicant, but just kind of the justification for that, and then having the landscaping instead of the fencing. So they were looking to not have to put in that fencing. And, but that was something where, I had mentioned the planning commission should discuss this landscaping in place of fencing if you think there's enough there for that kind of screening.
Right.
than the surface, and the lighting, that was one of the items that they wanted to not have to install the lighting, so that's something the planning commission, I guess, should consider. You know, they added some lighting that was talked about last month for pedestrians to get from the venue down to the parking, but they didn't bring the lighting into the parking lot. You know, you kind of can see both sides of it. I don't know, you know, if it's during the summer, even at 11 o'clock, it's not completely dark, but it's getting close to dark at that time and kind of on the shoulder seasons. It's not limited, I guess. You know, their application doesn't say they're only going to have summer events. I guess it's kind of the assumption we're making, but there could be some either kind of early season, kind of more spring events, or even into October. You know, you still get some nice weekends, so people may be willing to try that too. So the lighting in the parking, I understand being kind of more residential. You don't want to have the lights glaring out and being more disruptive. But at the same time, you need to make sure that the security is there for the individuals using the site.
Thank you.
Judy?
Yeah, I think, first of all, I think it's a really cool piece of property, and I'm glad that they've done some improvement to it, and it is a really nice piece of land. I think that the first thing that I normally look at is this consistent with our master plan? And with our table, it does say special land use, so that leads me to section 602, 600, 601, and those. And MAP had a really pretty two-part article on special land uses and facts. And I think one thing that I looked at when looking at this is that if we're doing a special land use, is it consistent with our master plan? It is under special land use. But then, does it meet our goals and objectives? And I asked myself, what would happen if every location in the district asked for the same thing? And is it a single use that could become offensive to? That's another thing to consider. And then talk about the possible proliferation of traffic, noise, and other problems. And those are things that we really need to look at when we're looking at a special land use under the guidelines that are given to us as planners. And I think that's the key thing to remember. We're planners. We're planning. We're not zoners, we're planners who look at a master plan, and the zoning is derived from that. So what we do here stays with the land, and I think these questions are very, very important to us as a planning commission. Many other questions I have regarding what is the season if we do this, and I think that needs to be clarified in some respects. Is it June, July, and August? Is it, just like we talked about before? I have a real concern with the lighting because I'm not sure this is dark sky compliant, that we need to also think about. The other thing is when you have solar, solar only works, I have solar lights, so it doesn't work right now very well because there isn't a lot of solar. The other thing is if it gets anything, snow or anything like that on top of it, there's no way to charge it. The other thing is that then it's on all the time in the summer. So whoever lives around that, the light is on all night or as much as it charges. There's no control regarding the battery or whatever longevity or shortness of that. There's no control. Is it motion sensor? That might be something to consider. Where is signage? When you talk about no amplified, does that mean acoustic only? We really need to, when I looked at private parks and parks, this is really kind of interesting. Central Park in New York only allows acoustic music. They have regulations for weddings. And it says only acoustic in in that area as well. And I'm not sure, the difference between only acoustic and no amplified. They might mean the same thing. I'm just not well-versed on that. I'm really concerned about if this is a single use regarding the adjacent land uses and what we're talking about in the master plan as being low-density residential, I believe. It talks about in their description that this is a historic farm. Is it on the historic registry, or it's just saying that it's old? Do we know that? Don't know. Oh, that's okay, that's okay. Okay. All right, I know it said so in our literature. The other thing that I had a discussion, and I'll let the Planning Commission know, that I had I asked where the growth boundary was in sewer and water, because I think that is imperative when we're talking groups. The state of Michigan has more septic and wells than any of our surrounding states. And I think our master plan and where we are as planners, the growth boundary is really important, and us moving toward large venues or commercial or resident or local business, all those things being on sewer and water. And I think it's really important for us to plan that and not continue to kick the ball down the road with septics and wells and septics and wells. I think that that's not the way to go. And as planners, we are needing to be very concerned with safety, health, and welfare of our township. And I think part of that is when we talked about the growth boundary and about extending sewer and water, I think it's really important to kind of steer our commercial enterprises toward that. And then I will, I guess, let me think. And then would there be any signage on Smith Road or any of these roads? Because it is pretty difficult. I didn't see that in the document whatsoever. So those are a few things of my concerns.
Okay.
There you go.
Thank you. Dan?
I'd have to kind of emulate Paul's sentiment in terms of the number of venues, and this being a pretty quiet rural area, at least it is today. If we were to move forward with this, I definitely want to have some more depiction of, from a landscaping standpoint, what are they planning to plant and where are they planning to plant it. We've asked that of everyone. I don't think that's inconsistent at all. With the hours, I was trying to think of other ones that we've talked about in the last few years in terms of hours of operation. I don't know if we've gone any that went out to 11 p.m. I'm not sure. It'd be nice to have just some consistency there, because we've felt those calls from all of the Lakes District and kind of their experience over a few new ones coming online. So I think limiting those hours a little bit might not be such a bad thing, especially when it comes to cleanup and all of that. Just kind of logistics tied to hosting a larger event. I'd like to see, if they are going to host some type of, if it is going to be limited to X number of events a year, have kind of a signage plan. I don't think it's too much to ask when you're hosting a yard sale or something that's temporary. You can tell people where to go as to mitigate the number of, people driving by or missing it. Maybe there's something simple that can be done to address that. If they're going to continue to pursue that. And I agree with Judy's comments on the lighting. Yeah, they're hard to turn off. And it would be a pain to go out every single day and get every single one of them because they're all in their own kind of mind. Unless there's some new tech where you can, address that, but having a lighting plan that I think is tied into the campus, if you will, would probably be a little bit better from a management standpoint than individual, solar lamps. And I agree with you, they didn't appear to be the downward reflecting style. It was just kind of your, more neighborhood look. But, I was just going back and looking through our use diagram, and this is a use that's available across the board, like in basically most of our zoning districts, which is something that I think maybe we should kind of talk more about, especially in our master plan when Judy references, like, is this something we want to see replicated everywhere? You know, it's these types of occurrences that kind of come to light for us, and then we get a chance to kind of debate it and talk more about it. We have a bird in hand, an applicant before us with the code that we have presented to us. You know, I don't have a problem with this. It is kind of a rural area. I think that fits, but would I put one of these everywhere that it's allowed? I think I would want to take another look at that. So that's just from a staffing perspective. Maybe that's something that we consider in a master planning document, and we talk more about events, especially across the township. As much as we've kicked that horse to death and short-term rentals and things of that nature, it's just we've had so many meetings on this, and this is just kind of one more of those types of uses. So maybe that'd be good for us to flush out. But I don't necessarily feel like it's the worst thing in a rural area. I just wouldn't want to see the impacts go from 0 events today to maybe a dozen across the course of an entire summer. So I think maybe there's some leeway in that number, or if there's some leeway in that number with the applicant, I'd definitely like to entertain that conversation.
Okay, thank you. Tracy?
Yeah, had a few questions. One, the tent. I know when we went out to the site review, and I think at the meeting last month, there was discussion about the tent. In Metro's review, it said the tent was illuminated. I think it meant eliminated. But I just wanted to make sure, because 300 people in the barn, and I don't think I've seen like the capacity of the barn, because we didn't go in it, so I don't know how big it is inside. And so I'm not sure if 300 people can fit in the barn, and if you're limiting all the activity to in the barn, then I guess, I don't know. I didn't see it necessarily in the fire review, so I don't know if that can be answered, because I would think then you would want a tent for some overflow or the reception out there, and I don't know. I did have a concern about 12 events, because we were talking 4 at the last meeting, and now we're up to 12. And the hours, 4 to 11, I think we talked about that the events would end at 10 and they'd be off the property by 11, like cleanup would be gone by 11. I think that's a little more reasonable, but I think it needs to be spelled out if that's what it's going to be. And then I like the idea of no amplified sound, because I had music, on my notes that we needed to address a definite cutoff time for that. And then I did have a concern about people walking from the parking to the venue along the dirt road. I don't think there's a path, like a mode path to go from the parking to the venue that isn't on the road. And so, I know there's only 2 houses back there, but there are people leaving the venue or leaving the parking lot, and if people are walking and it's dim, I'm just concerned about that. I don't know that that's necessarily our job to be concerned about it, but that's something that I thought, maybe even just a mode path from the parking lot so they're not on the dirt road, so that those people who live there aren't seeing multiple people walking on the road. Seems like I had one more thing highlighted. Yeah, and I was, I guess, seeing it in print, the parking lot. There are 3 entrances that, if I see this correctly, there are 3 entrances, and which I don't know if that's good or bad. I'm just like, it seems like a lot more than what I thought people parking in the grass was going to look like. So That, again, concerns me. I know that we had letters from the two people that live back on that road, that they were, okay with it. I just know that if we let that be 12 events, that's a lot of traffic back on there and a lot of activity in that field right across from one of the houses, and the other house, they have to drive past it, and it's facing their living quarters. So those are my comments, I guess. I like the idea of having the landscaping, blocking that parking. I don't know if it makes, I know it's all field there, and I think there was tree line closer to the neighboring property. I don't know if it makes sense to put it closer to the parking area. I'm not sure if that would help mitigate some of that. I don't know. And there was something in here about that we don't have the authority to waive the fence for the parking or something.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so I don't know if that's
That's
even
right.
a thing that we need, that's something we need to discuss. I can't remember, I didn't highlight it, so. So I didn't know what we do with that. If we can't waive it, then it has to go in. That's- Now I think I'm done. Sorry.
Just to clarify, and just to pick up on something that Dan said, it said places of public assembly. We have 16 zoning areas, and assembly, large and small, are not permitted in 7 of those out of. And they are permitted in 9, but out of the 9, 6 are special land use. So this is a special land use, and there's 3 use by right. So it's not really permitted in every district, but maybe about 60%, not 60%, but yeah, maybe about 55. And then it's special land use, and by special land use in this district. So just to kind of clarify that it's not really a use by right.
Well, I have some comments. I've had a chance to kind of absorb this one a little bit more than after we've had our site visit. And when you mentioned special land use, it got me, and I was thinking about this prior to this, is that special land use doesn't mean that it's a use by right. A use by right means that it's permitted in that district and there may be some requirements for it. But a special land use is, it may or may not fit in a certain location. And it's up to us to kind of have this conversation. Staff has provided us with some important information, but hearing from the public and trying to take all that information and figuring out, is this an appropriate use at this location? This is on a pretty sizable parcel, almost about 16 and a half acres. So you could kind of say, well, it's a rural area, it's a former farm. It looks pretty good, and it's a very nice property and nice rolling area. But when I look at the area around it, is it rural? Kind of. I mean, there's some pretty small parcels along Smith Road there. There's a lot of homes abutting this or very close to this property. Its orientation is not so much, if it was maybe orientated towards 3 Mile, might be giving a little bit different, but this is really kind of orientated off of Smith Road. There's basically a shared private road that goes back to the property. It's kind of tucked away, and to me, it has the potential to really impact a lot of those adjacent parcels. And so that would be one of my concerns, is that this is I'm looking at it as a pretty heavy residential area. And when you have events like this at 300, that's a lot of people. Even if you're not having amplified noise, even if we were to just have 300 people in a room and they're talking, it can get pretty loud. Now, add in things of a festive nature where people are drinking and having a good time, that noise gets a little bit louder. If they're in a barn, that's great when it's cool weather out, but it's not air conditioned, so all of a sudden doors are open, it gets a little bit louder. We have Porta-John facilities that are located outside, so now you have a lot of that activity. I don't think it's necessarily going to be always contained. So to me, it becomes, in this location, if there was more spacing between this and the adjacent houses, it may not be as much concern, but it was pretty visible from around those neighboring homes. And then the access is a little concerning when you have, like Tracy was saying, now you see on that site plan accommodation for, let's say, 150 vehicles parked in there. Now that's a grassed area, it's not improved, it's just a grass area. And that might be great for one or two events, but I'm concerned about having that as multiple events, and that all of a sudden becomes something where the grass gets worn down, it's not irrigated, so if it's not raining out and we're getting dry summer, and then all of a sudden that gets worn out, becomes dirt, then becomes mud, becomes rutted. It can happen pretty quick where that can get worn out. But I think this is an instance where, in getting back to Dan's comment about allowing these places of assembly, just because it's in this particular district doesn't mean it's always a good fit. And I'm concerned about that impact because of the close proximity for the adjacent homes in this particular area. I think it's a great proposal for use of the barn, and it's very nice and can be very attractive. I don't know if this is really a good location for it. And one of the things that is a little challenging is that it couldn't become like any other use. It's established. The use could be sold to somebody else, and they could continue on with that. It's something that could become somewhat of a enforcement issue. I think a lot of the conditions that staff placed on here as recommendations for conditions is appropriate. Certainly, we'd have to address the lighting and landscaping, but I'm just concerned that I don't know if this is an appropriate use in this location. So I have some reservations about it as from that standpoint.
There was a question about the dimensions of the barn. Down here, it said, if I'm reading this right, it's 45 by 75, is that correct? If you look where the barn is, there's a note.
Correct.
It says existing is 45 by 75. Doing fast math, even rounding it out, that's about 3,600 square feet. That's pretty small for 300 people.
Yeah, and I don't know what that would equate to for fire code for capacity. I have no idea.
And the fire department doesn't do that review until you get your building permit, but that's something we can ask the applicant to provide. I mean, they have access to the construction,
Yeah.
building code, they can tell us how much it would actually be rated for.
Yeah, I guess that concerns me.
Well, within the barn itself, you're not going to have people standing up, they're going to have tables there, too. That's going to chew up a lot of space, too, so.
Yeah, and I didn't do the research to figure out, if you have 10 round tables and they have 10 people at them, and, how much space that does, But,
And this larger topography of the map here that I'm looking at, it kind of gives me a better view of what would be affected and not affected. So it's, I can understand the noise factor.
You know, and something I was thinking about it when you were talking is that the private road too is a gravel road, you know, it's a private gravel road. And so adding that traffic to it, I know that it's a private road. What kind of, what can we implement to that or require of them to do to it, although they do have access to it and they use it. So there may be something that we should, you know, consider for dust on that, dust management, because a lot of, you know, the private roads, they don't get brined like the county roads do or anything like that. So
Is there a maintenance agreement, a recorded maintenance agreement on that road?
I'm not sure if there is or not. That's something we could ask to see if they have for that. I would probably not, but there may be something.
And just to speak to the Overmeyer's concern, there's no, I mean, for this, I don't believe there's any way that we could request some buffering on that side of the road because it's not the Raymond's property, so.
Like on the north side or on the east side?
On the
of
east
Smith?
side of the easement road,
Yeah.
so that it would buffer Overmeyer's, you know, even some of it, you know, at the very beginning would help. But that was one of my thoughts, you know, to mitigate that issue, is some buffering, but I don't know how we do that because it's not on their property, so.
Yeah, I mean, you could do, like, from the parking, to do any kind of buffering, the applicant have to push the parking lot back, so you could put buffering up
Yeah, I
on the
wasn't
road.
even concerned about that.
You're talking about the
I'm talking
entrance
about the
off of Smith
entrance
Road.
By the house.
Oh, up on,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
between the private
Well, that could
road
be,
and Smith.
that would have to be, if it could be within that easement, it would have to be agreed upon
By
by
all.
all the owners, including
Yeah.
the property owner in which that easement is placed,
Right.
so.
So
Yeah. Sorry, go
no,
ahead.
no, this is making me think about the private road, and, you know, you asked if there was an agreement, and we don't know. But if the owners all take care of that road, and yet this event center starts creating quite a bit more damage and traffic on that road, then who ultimately becomes responsible to maintain it? I mean, you know, usually this is, even if it's a handshake, it's usually an agreement between all the owners to maintain
I
it.
mean, like, I live on a private road.
Right.
And there's nothing in writing except that.
A lot of times
we'll
there's
all
not.
do it.
Right,
You
right.
know, we all go out and snow blow it, but,
Yeah.
but, yeah, ours is asphalted, this isn't. I mean, and we've talked about that before on other approvals, to make sure that it's recorded agreement, because then we have some way to mitigate,
Right.
you know, these homes aren't going to be the same people forever, and so the next person that comes in, there needs to be something to mitigate, you know, somebody's not holding up their end of the deal kind of thing.
Right?
Yeah, I'm concerned about the 300 people. I think it's large. I think the number of events is too many. So I would be open to looking at less people and less events. And then if there's something that we can do to mitigate, you know, some of that landscaping and the lighting stuff.
Okay, so some of the issues that I'm hearing here is the lighting on the site is an issue, signage, hours of operation, numbers of events, regarding the fence for the parking, pedestrian connection between the parking and the barn. Is the barn big enough? So what in terms of the capacity, what we would be approving, and I believe the request is for a small place of assembly, so it would be for 300 people, right? So even though they wouldn't have they wouldn't be allowed to have a tent, they could still have 300 people on site, correct? Unless we were to limit that.
Right.
Okay.
And that would, I mean, unless it would be, on the site, because the building would have an occupancy, but the site kind of is unlimited, so it gets to that 300.
So
Yeah.
can we limit it if if by definition it's 300 people?
You can, as a
Yeah.
part of a condition to say, because by limiting the people, you're kind of limiting some of the adverse effects to the neighborhood and things like that, so.
Okay, then also, I think there does need to be verification or some understanding of that private road in terms of both the easement agreement and a maintenance agreement. I think that would be imperative to protect all parties. And then also, there was this comment about added buffering to maybe some of those other adjacent properties. So,
Also, I don't think there should be any campfires or outdoor fires allowed. I mean, sometimes people like to have fire pits at their
I
weddings.
guess I have a hard time with that because it's a residence, and I know that she has a fire pit, I believe, in the backyard.
it could be related to the events, though, if that were to be a concern, I don't know.
It is a concern,
Okay.
because then it brings all that noise and all the,
Outside.
yep.
But if we have the condition that all the activity has to be in the barn, then, other than the porta-johns.
My biggest concerns are, I think it's a really cool site, but it's mono use in this district. And it goes with, in perpetuity with the property.
One last thing to bring up, and it was Tracy, your parking, I saw that too, and I was like, it's a little different. But I wonder, because we're kind of talking about this easement, is it possible to utilize what's already there in that drive access? Is it possible to come in directly off of Smith Road through the center of the property and keep the parking kind of in an established loop so that they're not entering onto the private easement?
I don't think so. I mean, it'd have to be building a whole new road.
Right. Well, that's what I'm saying. It's like if
Trying to remember that.
And it's real hill, when you make, it's
Yeah.
straight
Yeah,
out
you're
to the
looking at
barn,
the-
but then once you make the turn, remember, it kind of like
Yeah.
does.
You got a big hill here.
Yeah, you got a big hill.
Elevation.
Yeah, right, right, and it shows so on the,
Maybe. I mean, I don't know, the road's pretty flat through there, and then it goes, kind of graduates uphill, but.
I was just trying to think for purposes of mitigation, that maintenance of that road, because if I live on that, I think I'd be a little perturbed. It's a lot more use than what it was intended for. And without that not being addressed in the maintenance agreement tied to it,
Well, and her property does go the majority of the road. I mean, so, I don't know if that makes a difference, if she takes over the maintenance of the whole road.
Right, that would I'd like to, if that went to that point, I'd like to see some verification
Yeah.
of that, so that all the property owners, I mean,
Well, it would have
Because what
to be,
happens when
it
it
would have to
sells?
be in the deed. I mean, a deed restriction is what we've tried to do.
that's what I was trying to think. Is there another way to put it somewhere else?
Well, that's,
so that
I
it
was
is
trying to
their
think
sole
about coming off of
responsibility?
3 Mile, but
But
the elevation off of 3 Mile
Yeah.
is really bad.
That's not conducive.
So you're talking about coming just right off like her driveway right now off of Smith Road?
yeah,
I mean, we could ask the applicant to explore that. I mean, they're gonna have to come back with additional information to you,
Yeah, I don't know
so.
if road commission would allow a second access, but.
Kind of narrow,
That's what I was thinking, is it's narrow.
kind of narrow.
And parts of that, I'm not sure how you would widen it as you come up around the barn.
I'm looking here, it's pretty tough.
But they can try, I mean.
I mean,
just a thought.
Oh.
so what's the general feeling of the planning commission on this particular application?
Can we approach and... Is it okay if we answer some questions?
Does anybody have any questions of the applicant?
Well, just, I mean, they've heard our discussion, are they open to any of that, or is?
Yeah, well, you can come forward.
Thank you.
Oh, just want to touch on a couple of the big things. The one thing that was brought up was the traffic. The road commission looked at the traffic, they did traffic counts and, looked at the impacts of up to 150 cars or whatever. They didn't see any issues based on, and they were the ones that gave the preliminary permit based on that, in that regard.
But they don't live there.
That's true. They don't live there. There is no tent. We took that out of the plans, so there is no tent.
Good.
And she's open to the mode path idea, getting from the barn down to there. There is no written maintenance agreement right now on the private road, just a handshake. She is open to, and she can speak in that regard as well, to taking on all maintenance if that's the case, as she owns majority of the frontage on the road anyway. There is signage proposed, that was required by the fire department, so they can access or locate the venue if need be. And then, obviously, noise is always a concern. I still think that, with the topography being what it is out there, there's still gonna be some noise, that's inevitable, but those hills and being, depressed from 3 miles should mitigate a lot of that. You can't get rid of it all, but I'm hopeful that you guys can see that. And then the big thing with the lighting, we didn't want to do a full lighting plan. The whole idea of the solar lights was that they can be taken down in between uses, that they're not up all year round when there's no weddings going on Saturdays. That was kind of the idea, and that they can be turned off. They can just be put away when there's no weddings going on, put back in their barn instead of permanent light fixtures, 365 days a year out there. If we have to come up with a different type that meets the dark sky ordinance, then we can, see what we can do with that in that regard. And then finally, the number of weddings. That was, last time we started off with 4, but that was discussed on site, which I thought was mentioned, increasing that number so she can kind of feel out how it was received. I think that discussion would have to be held more with Sue to see what that number is realistic for her, for the cap on the number of weddings. And then finally, the time limit. The intent was 4 to 10, with 11 being everybody out by 11. So those were the operational hours.
Have you had contact with the neighbors that are on that private road? Are they aware of what you're proposing?
Yeah, they have letters.
There's
Okay, yeah.
They both are on board with it.
All right. It's just related to the private road, right? So if you're on Smith Road, it wouldn't impact you. Any other?
Questions? Can clarify?
The landscaping, is that something that you guys have spoke with in terms of putting together kind of a concerted
We can,
plan?
we could put together a landscaping plan, but the whole idea is to keep it, kind of rustic as it is. The only landscaping we were proposing was evergreen screening, and we can put more details, but we didn't do like a tree survey out there to show where vacancies are and buffering. It was gonna fill those in.
Yeah, no, I was just kind of, as a part of the parking issue that was pointed out in the fencing that was per our ordinance required, that would be nice to have some additional clarification as far as like what species and how many along that area of concern primarily, just so that we, I think, have something to fall back on, rather than requiring, picket fence in front of,
A field.
a field.
Yeah, and that's something we can definitely get. I guess,
Yeah, I'm just going back to like, from an enforcement standpoint, if there's something to rely on, it'd be nice to have a species and number and location.
Sure. Yep.
Just included as a subsidiary to the plan that we've got, or built into, you've kind of got like a lighting plan even. If you expanded that view out and just placed them within that field, it'd probably be all right.
Any other questions or comments for the applicant?
And just some mitigation to the buffering at the east side of the easement towards Smith Road.
I guess that would have to, I'd have to look into research, I don't know if we were able to do that, because we'd be planting on her property, would be my understanding.
If it's within the easement, like John suggested.
Yeah, I guess everybody would have to agree to it.
You
but
need
yes.
to, yeah, would be neighborly.
Can you clarify what area you're talking about with that? Where is it?
Where the Overmeyer's property abuts the easement from
Okay.
Smith Road onto the easement, between the easement and Overmeyer's property, if there could be
Okay.
some mitigation. Even if it's just up, not even the whole length of her property, but even just to get it to the house, so that the dust has some filtration before it hits.
I just wanted to be clear that.
Yep,
everybody's
nope,
considering.
that's fine. And that's all if everybody thinks this is still.
Well, I may be chewing the food twice, but some discussion around how many people.
So we said 300, that was, it's up to 300, that's what the land use is. I don't know if we'll be able to get 300 in there. She hasn't, submitted anything to the building department yet on the inside of the building. But the intent is to be able to hold up to 300 people, with this permit, basically, or this approval. We don't know if, obviously you're not going to get 300 people in the barn, but we don't know that number yet because we haven't submitted anything to the building department, and the fire department has.
Yeah, I don't know either, but it just seems real tight.
Right, and that's kind of where what she was leaning towards, up to 300 people. I mean, she'd be open, I just talked to her about this with lowering it down to 250, 225, I don't know.
Well, it's
Yeah.
whomever approves whatever, given the size of the interior of the barn versus the type of venue, because, as I say, you're not going to have everybody walking around, you're going to have tables and chairs and things of that
Yep.
nature.
So I think they're looking from you to tell them what the occupancy of that barn would be.
Okay, which we would have to go to the building department and get all that for you.
Yes,
Gotcha.
thank you.
Well, and you have to look at, just from a venue planning, when I plan an event, I look at, okay, how many people are going to be at the tables and how big are they, and chairs, and then you have a bar set up and a dance floor and, so.
Well, if you're talking about the summer, it tends to be hot, too.
Right. But I'm just saying, 300 people, just from the outside looking in on that barn, I don't think you're going to get 300 people in there. But I don't know what that number is. I would think half that, but I don't know.
We can find that out.
Any other comments, questions? Okay, so there's been several items identified on the plan, so,
I could start us off with a motion and go from there. Unless there's other discussion.
I was going to say, let's.
sure.
Yeah, I kind of feel like there's some unknowns here. I'd still like to have a little more clarity on this stuff for staff and for ourselves. And I don't know, I don't think we're going to get that answer tonight, but if we could maybe table this for an additional month, allow the applicant to come back with some additional information. And I've got kind of a host of things, just in terms of clarification for the planning commission for our next time around would be a sound mitigation plan, something that kind of lays out what's going on per the event and how that will be handled in the event of, some rowdiness or what have you, from just an operational standpoint. I think that'd be beneficial to have incorporated into the document. Two is some type of actual lighting plan. So you've talked about, you'll have it there on site, and you'll have it for X number of hours, but it'd be nice to have that built into the site plan so that there's an explanation of what that looks like for the duration of days that it's there and the number, tied to the number of events you have as an example. So that it's kind of spelled out what's going to happen and what it will be. Third would be the clarification of what the lighting fixtures actually look like and how they are in compliance with our dark sky ordinance. Fourth would be tied to signage. You've talked about requirements from the fire department and just location, duration of when it's going to be there, where it's going to go, things of that magnitude, so that staff gets a complaint that you've got 40 signs, or you've got no signs, we have something to rely back to. Fifth would be consideration of not only, and clarification of the number of events and the hours of operation, just to, again, tie that all onto the same site plan, have it be easy to read and simple to find. Six would be additional details tied to the site plan for landscaping purposes, type of tree, location, and number. Within those specific areas tied to the parking. And Tracy, did you want to get into the other portion?
They need to at least explore it.
Yeah, and just
No.
any other conversation you can have with staff to kind of clarify what the best fit would be for that to mitigate light and dust would be great. Seventh would be some type of discussion or maintenance strategy on the usage of the road itself. So it's tailored into it, so that there's at least some explanation detailing who and how often this easement area will be maintained or, brined or whatever that looks like.
It needs to be recorded.
And that could be a condition of it as well, so it's recorded with the easement. Clarification on, and maybe this is something where, I understand we're kind of in that 300-person number right now, but it would be nice for clarity purposes from a code standpoint to know per square footage and per the use. The code office should be able to give you something. They should be able to get you pretty close. And then if there's additional, things for ADA compliance or, lighting or signage that's going to come out of that, it would be nice to incorporate that in here for I'm assuming they're going to have like an exit and an entrance, kind of a delineation. So having those on here would be helpful as well. Is there anything I left out?
The fencing along the parking that the ordinance
Yeah.
requires.
And I thought that's,
Landscaping, parking.
I mean, you may be including
Landscaping.
that in your landscaping, I just want to be clear that fence is also something
Yeah.
you need to deal with.
Fence.
And the pedestrian connection,
and the pedestrian connection from parking to the site venue itself.
and do you want to have them explore using the driveway, the existing driveway to get to parking or access or something like that?
I mean, I drove out, that was just an idea. I think it's probably best suited there, but if they're gonna take care of the maintenance on the road, then I'm fine with that, it's just trying to mitigate that.
Did you say hours of operation, or was that in?
Yes,
Okay.
clarity
Number
of,
events.
Oh, yeah, okay,
clarity of the
gotcha.
number of events and the hours of operation.
Okay.
So what I'm hearing is, under the special land use review standards, asking the applicant to go through this, and we're sure that the commission feels comfortable in what the special land use review standards say, to be served adequately by essential public services, water, sewer facilities, schools, be consistent with the township comprehensive plan, all those things, 1A through H and 2, we're sure, because that's a lot of work for the applicant to go through. And I just want to make sure that,
In a month, if
Yeah.
the table
Well-
motion is supported.
Is there a support for Dan's? Then we can have the motion discussed.
I'll support if you made the motion there.
Yeah. Okay, Judy, do you have any other comments?
just to, I mean,
Yeah.
that's a lot for them to do. If, in my opinion, I'm not sure that the standards of review are completely met. According to our ordinance regarding special land use.
Judy, is there something additional that you need to help you make that decision? Do you, outside
Well,
of the information?
I think it's a special land use only, and we have to apply these standards. Is it really consistent with the comprehensive plan? Is it a mono use in the low-density residential district? What if everybody in the district would want that? Is it disturbing to existing future uses in the general vicinity and the community as a whole? I really think that, you know, these are in here for review for us. Production of traffic, noise, vibration, smoke fumes, glare, ensure the environment shall be preserved. These are things that I think we're going to need to apply to our finding of fact. And so I just, before making an applicant do all these hoops, I mean, I'm just bringing it up that this will be met.
Well, and to me, that's why I'm looking for clarity on these points, because they're the ones asking for it. If they can provide that clarity, and if they're offering 20 uses on an annual basis for weddings, I'm going to say, I would agree with you, that the use itself is probably not appropriate for where it's going and what's going on. But if it's 2 uses or 4 or whatever that lands on, and we're amenable with it, and the general public's amenable with it, and it's not that impactive, that's where we have that flexibility to understand, does the special land use fit in? And to clarify all these points is going to help us make that determination, but without it, I agree. So that's kind of why I want to give them time to be able to respond and make an argument back to us and have us make an informed decision, but it's not going to happen today.
So that sounds reasonable to me. So basically, we're just allowing the applicant to respond to these concerns, and then we'll evaluate that at that time and make the decision then. Okay. Did anybody else have any other comments? Paul, Renee, Tracy?
Nope, I'm good.
Okay.
No.
Yeah, because I think that's fine, and I'll probably vote for this from that standpoint, but I do have some serious concerns of whether the appropriateness of this use at this location. I think from the standpoint of the orientation of it into more of the residential area around it, the access of the vehicles going into that area, and I just think the scale of it is something I don't think is appropriate in this. But I think at this point, we're moving this forward to get the additional information and evaluate it at a subsequent meeting. Correct. Okay. All right, we have a motion to table it'd be coming back to the April 5th meeting agenda for consideration, and allow the applicant to respond to the concerns that were brought up by the Planning Commission and any other comments that were made by staff or the public. So all those in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, same sign? Okay. Motion carries. We have on our next item on the agenda is SPR 2-22, SLU 2-22, Beachview Apartments, public hearing, discussion, and possible action. We want to wait a moment here? Yep. All right. So this one was in front of us before, but why don't we start out with staff?
Sure. I went through and updated my staff report based on the additional information that was submitted, and there are still some outstanding items from the plan that are marked in red in my staff report. One of the big items that I wanted to bring up, it's on page 78 in your packet, and I kind of had mentioned it at the last meeting. I didn't know what the answer was about backing onto the easement itself, if you had to back into a maneuvering lane. And the applicant had said, oh, no, your ordinance doesn't have that. So I kind of I was like, okay, it doesn't have it. But in writing the staff report, I'm like, I want to double check that. So I guess kind of when I'm writing the staff report at the last minute, I sent them an email and said, hey, I did find this section. So that's going to be an issue for you at the Planning Commission level. But we did have the public hearing scheduled for that. So they haven't really had time to provide any updated plans or deal with that parking issue backing onto the easement, since this was just done, last week, and they were made of it, aware of it on Monday. So I did provide kind of some comments, and we're still outstanding on the fire department for this application, so we can't make a decision. And then there still is, the stormwater is outstanding. We did get a last-minute report from our engineer on the stormwater, and there still are some stormwater questions and issues that need to be worked out on this site plan. One having to do with snow storage. They had mentioned using the basin for snow storage, and our engineer would encourage us to not do that, just because a lot of times when the snow is melting, we also get rain events that need to use that basin. So if that's an option, to not do that. And there's this report here. There's one other item I just wanted to mention. Oh, and then there was some piping issues and stuff. So there's more details needed on the stormwater, so they'll need to work with our engineer on that. But like I said, I think that it's going to look a little different with the parking issue, I think, is the outstanding issue on that.
Right, okay.
Can I just ask you a question, though? It was kind of confusing on the fire department thing. Will they have clarification? Because on one place it says they need like a 20-foot minimum thing, and then it goes 24 to 24, and then 26. And so will they clarify which one, what kind of?
Yeah, so I talked to Kathy about this after the last meeting, because you had brought that up, because GORAC had a different number than what they had, and so she said that that's what was presented by the applicant, the 26 feet, and so that's what she went with. But it's all dependent on the height of the building, and that's why one of the notes in there talks about the eave only being a certain, because that gets a truck that doesn't need as much maneuverability on the site. And I did also talk to Kathy about, if you'll recall, I said, well, maybe you can just come in off the access easement and not even have the curb cut on the property. And I knew the fire department wouldn't like that very much, because they like to drive through things anyways. But she didn't completely shoot me down on it, but she did say that they've had issues, because they brought up Brookside. Is that the right? And they said that site, they always have issues with people parking where they shouldn't park, and then nobody's going through and enforcing that from the site perspective, so management's not dealing with it. So she really wouldn't like to see that. They're not necessarily opposed to only having one access in and out, it's just, it needs to be dealt with, and the site, it may be difficult because it's so narrow, and the number of parking spaces in the units, that it may not be feasible to do that.
Right, and then they also said that there's not adequate turnaround for them. So that was one thing that I guess that was kind of confusing, if it's 20, 26, 24, so I appreciate that. And then the snow removal was good, and your easement thing was good.
And we did, there was a document, I think, on your table that had the easement. Did that get printed out? I asked the assessor about the easement, if that was a recorded easement along Quality Inn. I don't know if that got put on your table or not. And so in the deed, it does have access to it, but it doesn't talk about maintenance or only emergency or not. It just is an ingress, egress easement that's there. And that's really the only detail that we've been able to find, is that a recorded easement does exist, essentially.
And that easement just goes straight back, right?
Yeah.
There's no relationship to the building to the east at all?
No.
I mean, it doesn't circle, because that's one thing I was wondering. Granted, this is a unique site, it's very narrow, it's tight. And while this is forward-facing towards the street, there's also the ability to do some development at some point in the back, potentially. I mean, likelihood of something happening back there could be, those properties could be acquired by this developer, they could build more. I'm wondering if there could be, because I do think there's valid concerns from the fire department about getting back into that. And I'm wondering if maybe it could be at least evaluated to have some type of an easement that ensures that kind of creates more of a loop that the hotel to the east is so long, but if it could go all the way down to that, and obviously it would require negotiations with that adjacent property owner, but at least to have an easement so that it does allow for free flow of that. I mean, and would allow for, fire apparatus or whatever to get back around in that area. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that could help their situation too. I mean, they're not, the hard part with the fire department is they're going, this is your site, I can only require you to do this much. But if they
Right.
looked out a little bit further, more long-term, there may be an opportunity to extend that easement. I was just gonna look it up on the aerial and see if that's even worth, having that discussion, or if there's something else that stands in their way. Just real quick, out of curiosity.
And then on page 73, you talked about, what is the dwelling density per unit? So that is that,
Oh, that
That's-
does go all the way around the hotel.
Yeah.
oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry, go ahead, you go ahead.
Yeah, so I don't know if that's necessarily the easement goes all the way around, but the hotel does connect back all the way through that.
Right, I mean, it could be used informally, but it would be appropriate to, if this might be a solution and potentially could benefit both properties, to allow for that. I mean, it's not just for this particular development, but also the hotel to the east, to ensure that they have safe, and all it is ensuring that there is an easement that allows for safe travel through
And I
that.
think maybe a little upgrading to the asphalt that's, there probably maybe some of the width or some, because they were going to do
Right.
it just to their property line, increase the width of the asphalt. So maybe that would be an option. Okay, I'm sorry, Judy, you were
That's
asking.
okay, on page 73, your report talks about dwelling density per unit. Can you tell me what that, you need to know how many,
Right, just what the,
People?
what the density of that property would be, what
Oh.
we're proposing. It was something we talked about briefly. In that district, we don't have a maximum density, but this is part of the site plan requirements. That says on your site plan, you need to tell us what the density is.
Okay.
And that line's still blank on the site plan, at least where I looked at it. They've got it mentioned there, but there's no number.
okay. Okay, so that's something too, right? Then, okay, I appreciate that. Good job.
Any comments or questions for staff?
How were people, he talked, when we were out there, they talked about a lot of the people worked across the street or something like that. Did they walk through the parking lot? I didn't notice that there's a sidewalk or anything, would there be a sidewalk connected to Munson? Is that, or just parking lot?
Just the parking lot. There's, on the plans, there's no proposed
Yeah.
sidewalk that connects the building to Munson.
Do we feel that's okay? I mean, I'm just bringing that up, but not that I have right or wrong, I'm just wondering if that's okay.
Yeah, there's nothing in the ordinance that requires that, and I know as a part of the sketch plan review, that was mentioned, is there an opportunity to connect it? And I think with limited space, that
Yeah.
was not incorporated into the design.
Okay, thanks.
Any other comments?
Can I ask Judy a question? I
Yeah.
just saw
Sure.
something. At the last meeting, you talked about native landscaping and native grasses, and you kind of said, thank you for that. And so when I went back and looked at the landscaping, there were no changes to that. So did you have a discussion out at the site visit that they were going to make some changes, or you were kind of saying, thank you for putting it on your plan already?
They agreed to, we talked about the one white pine, the heritage white pine, or the white pine in the back of the lot. And then I noticed on their new one, they were saving a few more trees. So that was basically it, and then talked about using the native species document and go beyond beauty to make sure that things were native.
Okay. That's what I thought. I
Yeah.
thought you were asking them
Yeah.
to make sure that they were using native species
Yeah.
out there.
Right, and it did say, I thought they did say something to that effect in there.
I didn't see it, but we
Okay.
could double check it. I just wanted to clarify, I wanted to make sure I was understanding what you were saying.
Mainly it was the pines on the back of the property, but it looked to me that they were saving additional pines on this one that I thought was great, so I have to commend them on that. There were a few more saving of trees. Thanks.
Okay, any other comments or questions? So this is a public hearing scheduled for this application, so why don't we start with the public hearing opening at 7:28 PM. If anybody has a comment or question or about the Beachview Apartments, please come to the podium. I'm not seeing anybody, so let's close the public hearing at 7:29. If the applicant, if you guys wanted to come to the podium and have any response to some of our comments?
We were able to make some changes to a site plan. Unfortunately, we were not able to get it to you in time, but I believe we've addressed a couple of those items. Sorry, Justin Mortier, East Bay Township resident, sorry. And I think it addresses the backing into a road, although I would argue this is not a road. There's no name, it's a driveway, for clarification. So in doing so, we've got a straight line of parking on either side. It actually, I believe, expands the stormwater retention by a little bit there to accommodate some additional stormwater rain and snow. With regards to the 30-foot height that is to the eaves, that is something that we have addressed. That would allow us to maintain a 20-foot cruise lane. So we've accommodated that as well. And the density question is 18 units per acre is the density rate on .66 acres at 12 units. We are very eager to try and get this project going so that we can make an impact to the housing for next summer. So time is of the essence. We would look for your support tonight. I have the drawing on my phone. Happy to pass that around and sanitize it if you like. And obviously, we do still have some things that we've got to button up, but I think all those will need to go through approval processes with the appropriate organizations.
Thanks. Anybody, comments or questions for the applicant?
I would just say, I agree we need this type of housing available. And nothing on here stands out other than the technical stuff that needs to be handled, and I'm not a technical person. So I trust those agencies to take care of that. I don't know that we can do an approval without it. I'm not sure. Staff would have to tell us that, so.
Comments, questions?
I think I'm good for this one. Just, yeah, clarity with staff on how you'd like us to proceed. I mean, just mentally, I'm thinking if we were able to just put conditions upon attainment of those, or don't we generally put a blanket statement of approval, final approval by all agencies? Maybe that would be the appropriate way to keep things moving, but I like the deal. It's a good, tough site, but it's maximizing it for a use we've been looking for, so.
So the lighting is in compliant with dark sky, and do we feel comfortable, how does staff feel about the fire department things? Can you deal with that, or you?
No, we have to have the fire department approval before you can make a decision.
Yeah.
Your attorney would be very unhappy if we made a decision without that, because I know they say you cannot do it without In addition, without seeing the site plan that you're going to be approving, to verify that it meets everything, and then we'll have to get that over, for stormwater and all of that too. So I would recommend against that, and you don't have any draft findings in here, I don't think. I thought I did this, oh, you did, there are some criteria, never mind. I was thinking I didn't do them because there was missing some information, but without the fire department approval, you really should not approve it.
If I could address the fire department for a second. Fred Campbell, 225 East 16th Street. The day after the meeting, last meeting, I called to Kathy Fordyce and indicated to her that we had the ability to use the access drive as the main access, shut off the road, eliminate a curb cut. And she said, after she reviewed it, she said, do you have the ability to increase the asphalt around the back of the hotel? And I said, no. I have an easement that allows me to get to the property, and that is as far as we can take the asphalt. I could talk to the hotel and talk about doing it, but there's no way that I can stand in front of the planning commission and say we can commit to widening out and giving you a 20-foot wide asphalt road around the entire hotel. And she said, well, then I view it as a dead end, in which case then I would have to come in the easement, make a right-hand turn, and I would be stopped. I would have to back out or do some kind of turnaround inside the parking. And she said, no, I would not be in favor of that. The other thing that she indicated was the way they fight a fire is they would pull in with the apparatus truck and drop a hose to the hydrant and then continue around the side of the building. So she actually has verbally approved the project if we relocate the fire hydrant to the west side of the property instead of in the center where it is right now.
No, I'd rather see that in a revised plan, quite honestly. I mean, if that's what you're going to. I think we need to see, an actual drawn-out plan that's going to meet the fire requirements and everything like that. And I agree with staff. Even though this is not a road, it is essentially a private road because it is providing access to those rear properties. So I think this is something that, I think the project is fine. It's really trying to make productive use of the property, and it's just the access and the flow that I think, I'm a little concerned because I think this is a template for what could potentially fill the rest of that back end. I mean, I could see where at some point, and obviously those properties are not under your control, but if the flow is done right on this, it could allow for additional apartment buildings to the back of this property, potentially.
In the light of time, is there any way that we could ask for a special hearing? Or do you have a study session that we could bring the revised plan to get it earlier than waiting for another month?
Well, we have one already scheduled for March 24th. And guarantee if we'll get you, I mean, I don't know what everybody else thinks. I think that was set aside specifically for GO-REC, so I'd be reluctant to do that.
It's going to be a long meeting.
Yeah, I mean, we actually moved that here so that we could get to these items here tonight in a reasonable manner. So we know that that's going to be very popular with people. So, I don't think an extra meeting would really fit in anywhere. I mean, we already got one already booked.
And I think that was the soonest everybody could get together when we tried
Right.
assembling that one, anyway.
So April 5th would be the next one that would be closest.
show you the items that have been addressed.
Quite honestly, I really don't want to see them at this point. I mean, it's really hard for everybody to kind of look at a phone and see all that stuff, so,
It's just 2 points, that's all. I'm just trying to speed a project along. And get
right,
this-
I understand.
And just trying
We have our schedule all set out, and, some of these things are obviously out of our control in terms of it. We're trying to meet, making sure that the plan fits and meets the ordinance requirements and stuff like that. So I think we'll be hearing to staff recommendations on this and, working through staff to resolve these items going forward. So, I mean, like I said, I think we're all supportive of it. We just want to make it work. And quite honestly, we want to make it a safe environment. It's kind of narrow back there. I mean, walking back there and seeing some of those buildings back there, it's not bad. Now, we put a 3-story building next to this hotel, and it's pretty tight in there. We just want to make sure it works out and it makes a safe environment for everybody. So, anybody have any other comments or questions, staff or the applicant?
I agree that
Okay.
we really have to have support staff and support at the township in having these documents, because we don't want to get ourselves in a situation that we're creating an unfortunate
Yeah, okay.
thing down the road. Sorry.
Any motions? Take action on this? Probably most appropriate to table to the next meeting.
I would move to table SPR 2-22, SLU 2-22, given the information that staff will ask the applicant to produce for the Planning Commission for the April 5th meeting? Yes. 2022.
Second that.
Okay, we have a motion to table until April 5th. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. That will be on the April 5th agenda. Thank you. Okay, next is SPR 11-21, SLU 5-21, Stellar Hospitality. We did have a public hearing back on January 4th, 2022. This update, discussion, and possible action. Thank you. You want to go ahead?
Yeah,
Are these different?
no, they're both the same, I believe.
Okay.
Thank you.
So at the end of my report on page 128, I had the list of items that you also saw at your January meeting that you had requested from December from the applicant, and went through, and they did provide everything that you had asked about in there, except for the TART access next to the dumpster that was thrown out there, if there was a way to move that. And they provided, in an email, they explained kind of the limited location of where that connection could happen at. We did mention at the last meeting, they have received a variance for the second entrance on there. I included those minutes again, just in the packet, so you had that information there. So, I mean, it is a large application packet, their site plan, but a lot of it's, they didn't change anything except for the changes you requested from the planning commission level. One of the outstanding items has to do with the signage. We did get the signage package, but there are some signs that are too large, for the ordinance. But I feel like that's something that, they're required to get a sign permit, so as long as the signage size would meet the zoning ordinance, I'm not sure that the planning commission should get too hung up on getting that information before your approval for that. So I did provide some conditions that were kind of throughout the findings and the standards and the ordinance to help you out, but definitely if there's anything that you need to add to that. And, yeah, I didn't change too much on this. I started with Claire's instead of reinventing the wheel. I started with her report and just made changes and added to it, so.
Okay. Andy, you want to make any comments?
Sure. Andy Andre from Triumph Engineering, 10775 South Saginaw Street, Suite D, Grand Blanc, Michigan, and honorary East Bay Township resident because I'm here so much. So, I'll take that as a positive thing. So, as Sarah had mentioned, we've been through a couple different iterations with the project, through public hearings, through different site plan submissions. And I think the plan that you have in front of you and the packet of information really represents a very good project. And I wanted to run through, there were 11 items that we were tasked with looking at, evaluating, and providing some improvements. And so I do want to do a rundown. We did include a response letter to that, and I'll just run down them really quickly because I want you to have an understanding that we did address each one of those items. So there was privacy fencing on the east side of the drive, or east side of the site. We did include that. We also included a detail that'll be a 6-foot vinyl fencing along the entire east side up until where the wetland conservation easement is existing. The uplighting on the flags, we had some discussion on that. We just removed the lighting. I think there's a little bit of a gap maybe in the ordinance where, hey, you can't have any uplighting, but we had talked about it before. I provided the national code where you provide uplighting and flagging. So, you know what, in the interest of moving things along, we just eliminated the lighting. Okay. The overall lighting issues, there were a couple locations where we had foot candle levels at 1 or above 1 at the property. We went ahead, changed some of the fixtures. We did forward throw, so that would keep some of the leaking of that lighting, in a lateral direction, so it's a little bit more directed. And those issues, we did provide house side shields, cutoff fixture types on the lighting, so that solved that issue there. As was mentioned about the sign, so we provided a whole sign package that would be very typical of what you would see as part of the building permit sign package. And there was one sign, I think that was exceeding the 100 square feet, the residence in. That's not a problem. We will make that adjustment for the actual building permit sign package application. We can do that. The dumpster enclosure, the height was reduced down to 6 feet. The driveway connection, which was this is when we talk about the driveway connection, the cross-access, again, that's on the eastern part of the site. I know we had tried to facilitate some cross-access. We had a lot of discussion about that, cross-access between properties. Unfortunately, there's an existing building, hotel that's there. But what we are doing is we're providing, I think, a better location. It's aligned with our drive down through here. So I think it's a better location ultimately, and that will have to come with redevelopment of the property to the east. And when that occurs, there'll at least be a provision within our site plan for cross-access. The driveway spacing, we did receive a variance at the January 11th ZBA meeting. Stormwater, one of the things we had quite a bit of a discussion on was incorporating more low-impact measures, design measures as part of it. So what we did, kind of give you a real quick, you might see it a little bit better, but as part of the large parking area that we have here, these ones, that little bit different color, brown that you see in the color, these are all bioretention islands. So the islands within here, there's 5 areas that we took out, which would have been where we initially had it planned. We just had a catch basin at that location. What we did was we removed a couple of parking spaces, and we're draining towards there. And there's a detail that you can see that we incorporated on the plan. So we have bioretention within that area. So we have a natural low-impact design, filtration. We also designed the overflow that ultimately goes into our underground detention system. So we're really getting a nice double whammy here of, the low-impact design. We still have our mechanical pretreatment units as part of it. So any of the areas that aren't through either the bioswale, which we have along our access drive from 4 Mile, or in the bioretention areas within the parking lot, they'll be directed through the mechanical system. to the underground detention prior to release out to the relocated stream. So I think it was, honestly, it was a little challenging, but I like the end product, I really do. And it's, to be honest with you, it's something that we're incorporating in other locations as well. It's very common in Ann Arbor, Washtenaw County, that we're doing this, so. The landscape species, we consulted with the Grand Traverse Bay Regional Development Guide, made adjustments in landscaping, and I think we have both the trees as well as some shrubs that we made different selections on. EV, electric vehicle charging stations, we have as part of the project as well. We have a couple, we'll probably end up with a couple more. Once we submit this to the brand, they might say, hey, you know what, because of the parking, add a couple more. So we'll have a minimum out there of what we have now. My gut feeling is we'll end up with some more, okay? And then the one that we couldn't really, I think posed the biggest challenge was we talked about the access to the TART path. And I really took a hard look at this and how we could do this. But again, TART path runs right along our southern portion here. Everything that you see in green, basically from this point forward, all to the west, from about this green area right through here, that is either existing wetlands, the relocated stream, or we are doing wetland mitigation within that area. And so there's a real challenge to do that. And if we move that any further, even towards the road, we don't want pedestrians walking in the street from our property to walk through the street to get to that to that path. So while it's not the most optimal location, we feel it's probably the best location, the safest location. And we do have quite a bit of landscaping that's occurring in and around that dumpster. So I think that was the one thing that we couldn't accommodate for, but we feel that it's still in the best location. Those are the updates that we made. I just do want to give you a quick update as far as the permits and approvals. Again, run through it. We do have MDOT approval, Road Commission, the Health Department when it comes to soil erosion. We, after this meeting, we already had that issued. We're just going to be renewing that Eagle with the stream and wetlands. And also with Metro Fire has reviewed and approved it. And then the timeline of what we're looking at is moving forward. The optimal time would be, say probably by the end of the month, would be starting the stream relocation. That's got to be the first thing that has to get done. So I'd say within a 3 to 4 week period, that's probably the first thing that'll get started and moving. And then optimally, we'd like to start, and the site work would follow immediately after that. And then with foundations, probably sometime in May. And this is every bit of a 24-month project. But again, if we're starting that foundations in May, it's pretty critical, 24 months to get open, prior to the summer season, so. Those are the updates we made. Again, feel like with the adjustments that through the direction and working with the Planning Commission and staff, I think we've ended up with probably a better project and ultimately a better product after this is built as opposed to when we were here first. So be happy to answer any questions that come up during discussion. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any comments, questions? Paul, do you have any?
No, I've gone over this a couple of times. That's no questions.
Renee?
All set?
Okay. Judy?
Yes, go figure. The sign illumination, you'll work with them on that, make sure that's, because I didn't see that in the drawing. I saw the size, but I didn't see any illumination, so there you go. And then I really would like to talk, because you've got a lot of landscaping there that's really good stuff, and I appreciate that. Irrigation, I'm really concerned about waiving the irrigation part of irrigating that stuff, because it's expensive, and we never know what kind of...
Right, so we would all the landscaping would be irrigated.
Okay.
I think that was a note, that's probably a note that's buried within the landscape plan itself.
Yeah.
It's like probably note number 5 of the landscape or
Okay.
what have you. So, yeah, that's all planned to be irrigated.
All right, and then, the earth change permit that we had in our packet was expired, so can you, is that a re-app, or where are we with that? What do we need to do?
Yeah, they would be required to get a new permit prior to the land use permit.
Okay.
I think there was some previous discussion about it would be issued once we approved it, but that might have been a different project. Seems like that was somewhere in the notes. Now I'm like wishing I wouldn't have said that even.
Okay, and then the sign too will meet all the setbacks, I'm sure, from the road with MDOT. And then, again, the fire department did that thing where they do 20, 24, 26 type thing, so maybe it's number 3 of page 154 and 88. We had 2 fire department deals with 2 reports from them on this property. Unilateral access. Would it,
Yeah, you know what, let me speak to that really quickly.
Okay, yeah.
So what they were talking about in that is they wanted a minimum of 24-foot access just to access the property.
Yeah.
And then because of the height of the building, because they have a ladder truck, they wanted 26 feet, and that's a building code issue as well as
right,
a
so you're doing
fire
26,
code.
is that?
So we have that.
Okay,
Yeah,
all right.
so so if you look around the perimeter, I'll call it the perimeter areas around each of the hotels,
Okay.
it's 26 feet. And then because the retail is only a single story,
Mm-hmm.
I think they noted in there, they didn't require such a large.
Just a 20.
Yeah, but that was because, that was directly related to code, to
Yeah.
the height of the building.
Okay, okay. And then the last thing that I had was, oh boy, on the number 3, the conditions that you guys have, now, is there a maintenance, do we need a maintenance agreement with that easement too? Because we're talking about the back, right? The back that kind
that's
of
number
whips
4.
behind. Oh, okay, so there is. All right, sorry. Thank you. It was, I thought it'd be like under number 3, because it's kind of like in all that, but number 4 is separate.
I had that same
Okay,
thing.
well, thanks, Trace. I'm done.
Run into it.
Dan, did you have comments?
Mine's just tied to phasing. I presume the hotels are gonna carry the bulk of the deal. And kind of the single story, is that something that, from a long-term perspective, could be more? Meaning you got a single-story building next to 2 6-story buildings-ish?
No, you know what, because of the mix and use, so we've engaged already with possible retailers for that location, and we're getting interest for a number of different things. So the concern, you're thinking about a 6-story, single-story?
Right.
We haven't had any feedback that that's been a negative thing, just so you know. We don't feel it could be anything more really because we're really running out of space at that point. And if we added anything more to that, I think we'd be even, I just don't feel it would be an appropriate use any further than what it is. And I know there was a condition, I think as part of the staff, is that because of the retail, and we came here because of the special use that we had was because of the drive-through that we had proposed. And so I think one of the conditions, if I'm not mistaken, is, or maybe it was in the staff write-up, was that we have to work with staff at that, prior to that retail permit being issued, if I'm not mistaken. Is that
Yeah,
right?
the
Right.
is
6.
Right, so I feel it's a really, I think it's a good fit, because we feel that with the uses that could play off the hotels, that's a good thing. You're capturing a lot of people in that location. It offers a great amenity to walk, to a service, to a restaurant, to, when we look at the drive-through, to that coffee shop or something to that effect. So I think the uses actually will play well off each other, and anything more than that, more than a single story, it's just too much.
Yeah, I guess I was just thinking because we just saw a deal that shoehorned, or is looking to shoehorn dozen units into a tiny little space. I agree with you. I think that another service industry or retail position on the first floor would be cool, but actually having some housing above it would also be kind of nice there too. So that's why I'm thinking, like, if we're gonna go up that big right next door and you've already got the guys that are doing the deals to put in pilings that are already gonna be there, why wouldn't you do it for the third lot and not just the other two? Save you a little money and make a little more at the end of the day. That's just me. But it's your plan. I was just curious if you had a longer-term view as to, you're 24 months into just doing those two buildings, let alone this. I mean,
Right.
year 3, the development pressure is going to be even higher up here, and the need for more housing is even going to be more. So I just, if we're talking mixed use, let's talk
It's a
mixed
good,
use.
it's a good point. It's something probably we haven't evaluated. I had a meeting earlier today, and part of the discussion was lack of housing in the area. So it intrigued on another piece of property, and then obviously hearing, some further discussion this evening prior to this, housing is an issue. So while I wouldn't want to squash that idea, I say at this point, we'd like to move forward with what we have, possibly evaluating something, considering it. I mean, I think it's well worth considering, but I think it's probably, yeah.
Well,
You're right.
I mean, and not even
Great
like,
idea.
in this location, I wouldn't advocate for workforce housing necessarily, or crossing the bay, like, I mean, and the construction go vertical right there will be expensive. But, regardless, I mean, we need all different types. And, I know parking is gonna be kind of one of the limiting factors, but, given the amount, and you control the entirety of the site, which is gonna kind of have an ebb and flow of it on a regular basis anyway, just food for thought. So if you come back in a few years and you've kind of, feel like there's some more need for density or infill, that would be something to just maybe keep under your belt.
Thank you.
But I like it other than that. I just wanted to throw my 2 cents out there, and the fact that if we had a corridor improvement authority, we're leaving like another, I don't know, I would say roughly $55 million of private investment on the table for just one site that we're missing again. So, I'm done. I'm off my soapbox.
Don't fall.
I like the deal,
That's how you
though.
feel. Don't fall, don't fall.
Tracy?
I actually didn't have anything because it's all been addressed here. I know we had talked about, I can't remember, it was just really cold when we were out there on the site.
Yes, it was. Yes, it was.
About the storm drainage for the other properties, because of the changes to this property, we think it had some mitigating effects to the other properties, and this is 3 years out before you get it all finished. Is there anything that is in the works to mitigate that in the interim?
Right, so yeah, I think
You know
part of
what
it,
I'm talking
absolutely, I know
about.
exactly what we're talking about. So Matt from Hopscotch was out there and said, hey, I'm having drainage problems in this area and that area. So I think part of that, really, I think, was that the construction stopped, and it was at a
Right.
point where it wasn't a good point, and then, the weather came, and so on and so forth. Once we move that forward, I think there'll be improved conditions because of the way his property kind of sheet flows. There's no catch he doesn't have any
Right.
catch basins or anything,
Yeah.
so that sheet flow is absolutely critical. And unfortunately, because I think of the construction timing, it just happened to be bad. So we've had, I was over there before the meeting, had delicious wings, and, but, had a discussion with them because we want to make sure, we want to have good neighborly ongoing relationship with him. Because again, like we had talked about, there's a good play of uses.
Right.
He's got a great, fantastic location, got the nice outdoor seating. We can absolutely see our patrons, crossing over, and then people that stay there, so on and so forth. So we want to maintain that good relationship that we have there. We're going to be doing some improvements. I think it was mentioned, one of the contractors kind of damaged his parking when we were out there, the parking lot. We're repairing that, and we've agreed to that with him. And then also, we'll make sure that drainage is maintained and improved. So, but I really think it was just a bad timing.
I'm
of
sure it was,
Yeah.
and that's for us to learn from that as well, is.
It is.
If something gets stopped in the middle, we have to put something in place so that that doesn't happen to the surrounding. But
Sure.
I just wondered
Yep.
what was happening. with
Yeah,
that, 'cause it wasn't
that'll be
mentioned.
addressed as part, I think, is the continued construction.
Okay, all right. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Well, hopefully this time it goes through. So I'm anxious to see that it moves forward. I think this is, I think this is going to have quite honestly, it's a nice project, but it's going to have a big impact on that. Visually, people are going to see this and I think this is indicative of this entire corridor, like Dan is always talking about the Corridor Improvement Authority. I think what that gets to, what he's kind of getting to, is there's opportunities to find ways to maybe improve this corridor, because I think we're going to see additional conversions like this along the corridor, and I think if there are ways that we can help to improve that and alleviate some of the issues, that would be great. But I guess with that, if there's, staff has provided a recommendation, they've also listed out some conditions. I'd entertain a motion, if anybody.
I'll try. I make a motion to approve SPR 11-21 SLU 5-21 for Stellar Hospitality with the conditions 1 through 7, because I'm including sign illumination, although I think that's handled through the sign permit, but I don't think we had any others to add to it.
Okay.
So
I'll
1 through
support.
7.
I'll support.
Okay, we got a motion to approve SPR 11-21, Special Land Use 5-21 for Stellar Hospitality for 2 hotels and a retail building, and that's been supported. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries.
Thank you, everyone, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for the rooftop seating area.
There you go.
It's in there.
Thanks for irrigating. We're gonna make a
All right.
garden top roof, rooftop garden.
No, it's a lounge. It's a cocktail lounge.
Go.
It's right there.
It'll be done by St. Patrick's Day.
So next item we have on our agenda is SPR 3-22 Alexandra Inn for introduction, discussion, and schedule of public hearing. So staff?
So this is the first time that you're going to see, you've seen this application. You were out there tonight to take a look at it. There are a couple of outstanding issues related to this application. So I think it's a good opportunity for the Planning Commission to get an introduction, have some discussion. Yesterday morning, we did have a meeting with the fire department to talk about their access and requirements to the site, because again, it's a narrow site. They want to put a tall building, which requires a big truck for fire access into the site there. So there are some changes that will be coming to the site plan for the Planning Commission, and I don't know, do you have the one that's in the packet, or? Okay. So you'll have to, I guess, at the next meeting, you'll end up seeing, hopefully the fire department will have approved it by then, what the site would look like, because there's talk of moving some of the parking or removing some of it, moving it, adjusting some of the parking lot to accommodate the trucks. Outstanding issues that were included in your report have to do with the height and the calculation of the height, and exceeding the 35 feet that's in the ordinance. I've said that we need to get the distance to the midpoint of the highest roof of the plan, and they're talking about it being exempt because it contains elevators to go up that high, that it wouldn't be included in the height. And my argument would be is that that top floor is not just an elevator shaft or a stairwell. It includes restrooms and a prep area to give access to kind of a rooftop area that would be available for the hotel individuals. So that's one of the items that still needs to be worked out on the plan, and I don't know if the Planning Commission has any comments related to that. Parking, there was a request in their paperwork about allowing for kind of a reduction in the parking there. There is limited space. There's 34 rooms there, and the number of spaces plus the employees. So they are saying that there's a Beta stop nearby there for public transportation. Their employees have some employee housing that they're working on that's less than a half a mile away. They feel like that would help with the parking situation for their employees. And then their experiences just from running other operations that, they want to have as much parking as possible, but also the limitations of the site. So the Planning Commission will need to have a little discussion, I guess, about that too. Knowing that parking is an issue and, how to deal with that. The need for a photometric plan was also mentioned in here a couple of times. And so outstanding, we still have the fire department review and the stormwater review from the engineer. We did hear back from Eagle, because that was mentioned in the initial initial Wade Trim letter and from soil erosion, and Eagle has said that they don't have any involvement in this site. And that kind of came from, it's in the floodplain, but the township had some issues at the park next door trying to get some concrete pads put in for picnic tables. And so, in speaking with Brian at Wade Trim, he's going to make sure, try to find that out as soon as you can, just because you don't want to go through the approval process if somehow Eagle's going to tell you can't even pour a concrete pad for a picnic table. So that has been dealt with. So there's just a couple of items on page 235, but I think, it's a great opportunity to get an introduction to this. It does require a public hearing based on your ordinance, even though it is a use by right and a site plan review. We have that public hearing requirement. And the applicant did ask to be on the March 24th agenda, so that'll be something. I know you already kind of talked about it a little bit tonight related to GO-REC, but I just want to make you aware that they were requesting, if possible, to be put on that agenda.
Okay. Thank you. Doug, do you want to do your presentation?
Good evening, everyone. Doug Mansfield, Mansfield Land Use Consultants, 830 Cottage View Drive, Suite 201, Traverse City, Michigan. And thanks for making time on this long agenda for us and meeting out in the cold again. It was a beautiful night, wasn't it?
Yes.
Beautiful day. I am here with the third generation of the Werfel family. That is amazing, and I'm really old. So it's been just a pleasure, and if anybody knows about operating hotels and motels in this corridor with the traffic and the complexities of the beach and the other users, this family should do it. So we have a proposal here tonight called the Alexander Inn, after Allie Werfel. This is 34 rooms on a site that's formally probably almost an acre, but there's a really large right-of-way and a really deep ordinary high water that gets it down to a legal description of 0.62 acres. We have developed a hotel which fits in an envelope. We submitted that envelope to staff that would include the parking in the buildings and such, and then, of course, the agencies. For the fire department, we have a different, fire department's looking to buy a new truck, aerial apparatus truck, and then also, if the run gets called for this, right now it would come from the city, okay? And that's how the turning movements work. It's also the city truck is bigger than the county truck. So Our radius got a couple feet bigger, so in the change that we discussed with them yesterday, we're basically going to widen this approach out and move a couple of these spaces down. For all intents and purposes, the grade shaded area is going to be the gray shaded area. You're going to see a different layout in the parking to make that work. And we're going to move it a little bit into the MDOT right away. So we will sort that out. Stormwater-wise, because of the time of year we are, this is not a good time to go out and do an infiltration study for stormwater. So we are using the same methods, materials, elevations, distances to groundwater that we've used not only on Werfel's other hotels, which were cited to be, miles away, but also Tamarack and everything, the other ones we've done along that corridor historically. The groundwater doesn't change there, and the elevation, the ordinary high water doesn't change. It's, and we have, that sets our distance for how much filtration we need, so. So as soon as that, and prior to any land use permit, we'll get that done. I think we've conquered our landscape plan. We did do the cut sheets for the lighting fixtures and the details, but we didn't get the photometric plan done yet, so we'll get that in. So the final thing is, yes, the family has come up with a fairly inventive idea. And we've got all kinds of measurements and details and such programmed out, and to me, it's an interpretation of this. And I'll say there's some allowances in the ordinance that frankly, people want to take advantage of, they can, and make this project as exclusive and allow it to deliver it to its occupants as much as they can. So the ordinance calls for 35 feet to this midpoint of the roof. It allows for appurtenances, certain appurtenances to extend above that. There was an early discussion with the planner that thought this had validity on the roof deck, and some of the interpretations stem from things that were gathered around Baywatch on your last planner's approval. So we are here for an interpretation, and this is taking it to the next level. So you've got a lot of dimensions, and we can give you a lot more. We are serious about the roof deck, and there are issues when you do a roof deck of things you need to accomplish up there. Discussing it with the fire department, my understanding was, provide this piping, these connections, hydrants, sprinkling, and it can work with them. And it actually reminds me of when we did Tamarack, and I can remember the conversation was, because that was the first one to really go to that height, and really push the setbacks in and go up. And then we had this allowance in the ordinance, and I can remember Ralph Bergsma being on the phone from Phoenix or Florida or somewhere like that, being the past owner of the waterfront and your planning commissioner and an architect, and him saying, there's 6 ways we can carve this cat up and make this happen, that the developers can, but it's not quite the look we're looking for. Give them the ability to make this look good and do what the ordinance allows. So hopefully there's something in the end that will respond to that, because there are interpretations being made. Beyond that, there was some, with the February meeting, the February submittals, I will say there were some things that we thought were going to be happening with the submittal that's putting our purchase agreement in jeopardy, and the noticing of this. You don't have to always do an introduction before these, but with Claire being gone, I think some things got skipped, and we are asking to be on the agenda for the 24th. So, and that, I think that is scheduled to be noticed. So, that's where I stand on this. Josh, do I have anything to add right away?
Okay, thank you. Anybody have any comments or questions at this point?
Hey, Doug, could you speak to the use of the upper floor, the rooftop portion of it?
I was going to ask the same thing.
I'm actually going to hand it off to the owner operators of that.
All right, all right.
Thought Ally was going to.
Josh Werfel, former East Bay resident, currently at 10387 K Ray Road. What we're looking at the rooftop scenario, this particular property is a smaller piece of property, as everybody sees. Not a lot of outside usable space for a lot of our guests. We're looking for, in era of COVID, having space away from other people to provide open air opportunities. It allows a similar feel to the Indigo facility, is where we're ultimately after, as well as the opportunity to, on summer days and appropriate weekends, et cetera, to provide continental or some type of a food, limited style use of that area. We're not having any type of cooking facilities. That's not what I'm referring to, but I'm talking in reference to some type of potential food scenarios that are within a continental breakfast theme.
Got it. I was just kind of curious if this would be open to the general public or if it's for guests only or.
So at this point in time, because of the parking lot configuration, we've wrestled with that same, we knew that comment was going to come up, and we've looked at it in multiple different ways. At this point in time, it's going to be for the occupants of the property, unless we feel that we can manage the traffic flow of the property, because as everybody knows, when they go to hotels, you have people that leave for the day to go enjoy Traverse City, and then you have people that want to stay in, and then you're going to have transient people coming back and forth. Through all the properties that we've owned, between the Sugar Beach to the Beach House, they've all moved differently, especially the smaller properties, people tend to stay longer. The larger properties, they tend to split. It's really an interesting phenomenon. And so as a result, until we get our hands wrapped around exactly the operations and how the types of people we attract, because this is more of a boutique-style property, we're trying to create a more intimate feel for the guests in the way we design the rooms. And if you look at the hallway patterns, how we've offset some of the doors in order to allow for families to have 2 rooms combined instead of 1, and then they don't have to come into a common hallway. It makes it a more intimate feel for those types of guests. So as a result, until we understand the flow exactly, we're going to keep the property to the guests. If the property turns out to be where everybody leaves and goes to the wineries and we have parking available for it, I'm going to say that we might have an opportunity for that. But our main concern is for the people that are staying in the rooms. And this is why they come. This is why they come to stay in this particular property, is for this amenity, because it's the only one that is currently on East Bay, and there's none on West, just the Indigo, which is not technically on the bay.
Right.
So it's going to be, we feel it's going to be an incredible opportunity.
I guess I just brought that up because I'm thinking of, just long-term, we've been talking about kind of a coordinated bay strategy and different ways to kind of move throughout that corridor. And also, call it a district, call it whatever you want. Not specifically tied to this, but if there was a way on the water side where people could kind of safely and publicly walk between properties, if you had patrons that would kind of hop throughout that entire district, this would be open long range.
We definitely will take a look. We've also discussed that. Again, it's going to be an occupancy load issue. Once we get into the actual building permit phase, assuming we have the blessing of the board, that we will be designated with the load that's on that roof, and then we'll have to determine how we can handle both the occupants in the facility, because if you look, the property is 34 rooms, they're all single kings, so we're looking at a maximum occupancy of 68-ish, plus or minus some kids sleeping on couches, but what is our maximum load going to be on that roof exactly, and then how do we handle that from a managerial point of view?
Sure.
Because I don't want to overload any part of any hotel. We've always tried to keep it accommodating for everybody. Otherwise, I don't like getting yelled at, to be honest, and so we try to make it easy for everybody. But yes, if we have foot traffic and if we feel that we can handle it, we'll definitely allow it. until I understand, or we understand as a company, how this property is going to function as the occupants of the property, we're going to be real closed to begin with, so.
That makes sense. Thank you for the clarity.
So can you talk about the height thing? And maybe staff needs to.
So I'll clarify this because I'm the one who actually came up with the family, with the design and the way I interpreted the code. The way we did the Baywatch Resort was 35 feet to mid-gable as we got approved. And what we interpreted that was 35 feet to mid-gable, which was, the gable was designated as this area. We fit underneath the 35-foot threshold on this side with the main part of the building, which works out, I believe, at 34 feet, 11 inches. And then the stairways and elevator were contained within what we refer to as, what do we call them?
Curtains.
Aesthetic appurtenances to allow, and that allowed us access onto the area. We designed the roof gable to conceal the majority of the deck, except for these small outcroppings. And again, the roof is sloped going back to the roadside, so from the road point of view, it's going to mitigate all those sounds coming to the deck, as well as not being able to see the occupants of the deck. Again, trying to conceal everything so that we're not a noise problem. We're not just out there so everybody can see it. It's just a concealed environment. And that's how I came up with my interpretation of the ordinance.
So, but there is, I'm just trying to understand this. I like the concept, but there's restrooms, there's linens, there's prep room, stock room, so it's more than just mechanicals.
Well, if you look at the restroom, well, I'll deal with the restrooms to begin with. The restrooms, for the majority of the part, are contained within the roof line of the slope, and they don't protrude above, other than the roof that conceals them, they don't protrude above the actual ridge line here.
Okay.
We put an aesthetic roof over the top of the restrooms, and that's just to divert water flow in order to make the building look aesthetic. But realistically, they don't protrude above the roof line. The elevator, obviously the two stairways in the elevator were required. We put the prep room next to the stairway in order to even out the building. We're kind of a symmetric family, and it made sense to make the, sorry, I was stepping away.
Yeah, maybe you can move that closer.
Okay. So, we wanted the building to look aesthetically pleasing from the roadside. We felt that if the building goes up if you look at the aerial footprint, you'll notice it looks like an H. And we felt that if you go up all the way up and almost get to the top, and then you cut that H off, that it's going to create an aesthetically not pleasing environment. So, as well as it gave us a needed area for prep, just to be really strictly honest. This is a small site and as a result of the challenges we've had with the fire department, which we've solved, we believe, and we had to be very conscious of the footprint that we were going to build on.
Okay. So, Claire and Sarah.
Yeah, can you walk us through what?
Yeah.
Because first of all, I'd like to find out what section of the ordinance we're looking at, and then I just have some questions too about the actual site plan and the building profiles. So, yeah.
So, let me get that section where it talks about the height. So it talks about height in a couple of places. One is in section 401. It talks about the maximum building height being 35 feet, and then it's got the 50 with the little footnote type of thing. But there's another section that I put in your report. It's on page 229. In section 412, it talks about permitted height exceptions, and it talks about you can go up to 50 feet, and then it talks about stepping back, the setbacks on that. And I guess my discussion has to go with the definition of building height and how you measure building height. And the building height is the vertical distance from the grade to the highest point of, there's a flat roof, and then the mean distance between the even ridge for gable, hip, or gambrel roofs. So they have provided the midpoint of a roof, it's just not the highest roof line on the building. And I guess that's, my interpretation. I talked to Claire about it. We both agree that height should be measured from, one of the front roofs, not this roof that they're measuring
Not the side
to.
gable.
Yeah. That it should go up to higher. And the ordinance does not give relief if it's only a decorative roof, or anything like that. It just gives the relief for exceptions, and that exception's related to the stairway and elevators, and I would argue that there's more than just that, that's in those roof lines or that height.
Can I add a secondary comment?
Well,
Just as a secondary comment to this, I just wanted to point out that the height of this particular property is actually shorter than the current Baywatch Resort. So we were able to pinch everything and still stay underneath the cupolo's height at the Baywatch Resort, even at the tallest point of this building, which the Baywatch was approved. So just from a total height point of view, if you add in where the cupolas are on top of the Baywatch and the ridge line of the current of Baywatch, the ridge line of the Baywatch and this ridge line are really close, and then the actual height of the apertures over the stairway are actually about 1 foot to 1.5 feet shorter than the Baywatch Resort. Total height to the top of the cupola.
I have to echo the fact, I got big problems with the height interpretation. Based upon what I read in the ordinance, it's pretty clear that it says maximums. And then for any permitted height exceptions, for every 2 feet, you have to move in 2 feet for every additional foot of height. So then I said, okay, fine, what's our definition of height? And when I go back to our definitions of heights, it says, when referring to a tower or other structure, the distance measured from the finished grade of the parcel to the highest point on the tower or other structure, including the base pad and any antenna. So, you're looking at 50 feet, we're permitted 30 feet, so you're going like 33% over what's permitted. So I probably need to do more, I probably need to do more homework on this, but at this point, I don't see how it goes above 35 feet.
So, and then the exceptions to this height requirements in section 504 of your zoning ordinance. And it talks about ornamental purposes such as cupolas are not required to meet the height requirement for that. And then it talks about the chimneys and smokestacks and stairwells and elevators. And then freestanding commercial towers it talks about. And then it says the foregoing permitted exceptions shall not include uses for human occupancy. So when you're talking about exceptions to your height requirement, I think all of those come into play with that. And I guess just to go, I don't know the specifics of the Baywatch property, and I would encourage the Planning Commission to not necessarily refer back to a different application that happened in the past, trying to drive forward, making your decisions. You need to rely on what your ordinance says.
What it says, yeah.
And, maybe if there was an error, you're not required to continue to process it in error. I'm not saying there was, but if for some reason you were to go back and do that. So, yeah, I mean, I guess that would be my interpretation, like I said, with, talking to Claire about it as well. And there's always the opportunity, I guess, for the Zoning Board of Appeals to do an interpretation as well, or to have a formal decision appealed to the ZBA as well for the height.
Could I just make one clarity on the base building? you said it, I don't think your planning commissioner understands it, but on the base gambrel roof, we do meet the criteria for that. And I need you to understand that you are measured from the eave to it's the midline. Height in East Bay Township is from the middle measurement between the eave and the ridge line.
Where does that say that in the ordinance?
It's in the definition of building height.
Right.
So there's definition of height and there's definition of building height.
Well, as I said, I got to do more homework on
I
it.
just, that is there, and that's been used many, many times in the township. The only other one that I will say addresses this, and we may want to pull out, is how, again, Tamarack stairwells were approved. One of the things that we talked about at that time was, everything's based on a single roof pitch. You shall not have any extra towers or primary roofs. So I'll pull that one out in the meantime also and see how that fit in there, because that is the one where we said, yes, we could cap these off, we could make ugly roofs out of it, we could do this and that and meet the ordinance. However, and that's where planning commissioner spoke up, and that was carried out through Peninsula Bay then, and some of the other ones that were higher at the time. So, but I'll look at that. Again, this is an introduction tonight. I think we've got room to cure some of these things. We have been discussing this with staff for a long time, and we're serious about it, so we're willing to work with them to see if we can meet that interpretation. Okay?
I'm concerned about the parking somewhat, because I don't want that pushed to, I think it's Jen's Park. Glenn would like it to be Glenn's Park, but to Jen's Park, like Tracy had chatted about a little bit. You know, that people using that area will use Jen's Park as an overflow.
Oh,
And, you know, they won't stay on the property, this property. They'll park other places.
okay, for parking purposes.
Yeah, for
that's what
parking,
you're
and
worried about.
I'd like to, so you need to have, according to our ordinance, you need to have 34 spots, plus spots for employees.
Right, 2 more for employees, I think is what we calculated.
So you have two employees?
Yeah, on any given shift.
Okay, so 36 spots
Right,
total?
Right.
Okay, yeah.
And how many do we have?
34.
So again, similar to the other approvals that you just made, they have secured housing, or will be securing housing near the site. It's got a beta launch or a stop at the half-mile away, and they can accommodate that, so. But at least we've got one for every room on the site, so I want to be proud of that. Because the other one didn't,
Yeah.
so, yeah.
And Doug, the balconies, I didn't have my ruler with me, but they're like 2 chairs, they're not like,
They're not.
A French
cast-
balcony?
They're not cast, they're like a Juliet balcony,
Oh.
actually, yeah, right.
okay,
So,
so you just kind of
right.
look, you
right.
can't really go out? Okay.
Oh, no, they-
Okay, they're
no, they
Juliet,
are.
okay, all right,
They're true balconies.
all right. Thanks.
On the parking thing, I know we've talked about, and I think we did an agreement for a hotel a couple months ago, that could provide an agreement to get their staff parked elsewhere to help with the parking requirement.
Yeah, I think there was a shuttle for Avid Hotel.
Yeah. Thank
Bob
you. I
Evans-
couldn't remember.
Next to Bob
Plus, they
Evans.
got 3 or 4 rooms without parking on the site also, I think is how that ended up. So it was a big number, you know.
But I
so.
just, I mean, there's ways to mitigate it, but they have to be documented, and there has to be an agreement.
I think they were
So,
actually only short 4 parking.
not just saying they can grab the shuttle, something so that we know if they don't grab the shuttle, they can get to their car and
Okay.
to work, you know, that kind of thing. So I'm still, and staff can figure this out, but I'm still concerned about the height on that front part of the building. Because it is occupied. I mean, I wouldn't be so concerned if you weren't trying to occupy it, but you're trying to occupy it. And again, I like the idea, but it's got to fit.
You mean the flat roof or the?
No, the front of it that's above the 35, that's up to 50. I'm having trouble how to mitigate that within our ordinance. So I don't know if you have to change the design or what. And I know it's aesthetics, but I don't know how to fix that. So that's a concern for me.
And that's,
Yeah, which it
that's
wasn't.
okay to say. So, I mean,
Yeah.
we understand. That's why we're here
Well,
tonight.
and I'm just, because you're talking about wanting to be on an agenda that we already told somebody else they couldn't be on.
Well,
And
I'm going to say there's a little bit more
so-
background to this one, but, yeah.
Well, they came last month for an introduction, and we told them no tonight, so I'm not sure that there's more background. But anyway, there's a lot to do in a very short amount of time, is what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
So, that's.
That's it, that's the
That's
quick
all I
thing,
can-
though, yeah. Fire department was the big one, I will say.
The other thing I'll just mention, and just from reviewing Wade Trim's letter, they mentioned the need for documentation on stormwater management and the concern about, is it underground storage? And that the stormwater ordinance right now doesn't allow underground storage unless there's a documented.
Actually, we read the ordinance, and you can read your own ordinance, there's nothing about a variance. I've done at least 6 underground systems with this planning commission on there. We've never been required to have a variance, and in fact, I tried to take a variance up to the planning commission and the board, and the town, and your attorney said, you don't do variances. It's nowhere in the ordinance, I hope you would read that section in there.
So we'll need to figure that out. before.
Yeah, I mean, that's, you guys gotta,
Because we've done them, I mean, Baywatch had it, Tamarack had it, I can't think of them all that we've done underground systems. The property's just too valuable,
right.
so.
I'm just,
Mhm.
those are things that, it's a short amount of time to get fixed,
Yep.
so.
Any other comments from the planning commission or questions?
Can I ask Tracy a question based on your comment? So are you looking for more of some type of a parking agreement or a shuttle plan?
If they're short on parking for the rooms and staff that they have, we've made other hotels get an agreement, right? They had an agreement in place before we could approve it, or it was one of our conditions.
I think, a letter from
Right.
hotel manager.
Yeah, so,
Statement stating that they would park in that access easement prior to the easement for the access.
right.
So I just
So-
wanted to be clear that we're looking for more information related.
Yeah, I mean, it just needs, because they're short on parking, we can't just say, oh, they're short on parking, Jen's Park is right next door, they can use that. Well, they can't. So there has to be some way to mitigate getting enough parking, which
So do-
we've done with others.
I guess what it comes down to is at some point, there's a certain like carrying capacity of a site, and like there's only so much you can build into it.
Right.
It seems like, I mean, I like the idea, it's a great project, but I just think that there's putting a lot into this site, and I'm a little concerned with this, this kind of practice of allowing for alternate parking without that being a consistently applied, I get we're trying to accommodate the situation, and, at some point, this is really just putting too much hotel into this particular site, and really needs to be adjusted to accommodate it, and then there wouldn't need to be variances or coming up to these solutions, and you can come up with some agreements to have people, commuting on Beta or whatever, but over time, these,
How long is
it's,
that gonna last?
yeah, it's hard to maintain that, and I mean, I don't think our parking requirements are real stringent. I think they're there because these are, particularly in this particular area, we do get a lot of, vehicle traffic and people parking, and I don't know if this is really a good practice to provide that. I think it might be better suited to say this building needs to be adjusted so that it fits that site. And that's part, the same thing with the height, the building height. It's not, it's kind of exceeding what the requirements were. And I don't think that that's really what was intended in the ordinance, is to accommodate something of this magnitude. So.
Uber close.
So, John, like, just to clarify, under like a special land use, there's discretionary and non-discretionary standards? And I believe that this is a...
This is just a use by right. It's not.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Well, all right, I guess I was reading. So, but it's still something that I think that, I agree with John, that we've really gotta, not take a kind of use, it's in our ordinance, it's not something that we can, telescope or make bigger or smaller. It says what it says.
Yeah, I would agree, although I mean, I know that it's been a practice for a long time to figure out, especially with the hotels on the Strip, figure out off-site parking and stuff. And if there's a way we can figure out how to...
Well, there's a really good way is to just alter the building so it fits the site. I think it's being, I guess if there is going to be this practice, then I think then the township needs to adopt a policy or something in place and
It's
put it
kind
in
of
the
the
ordinance.
form function thing.
Yeah,
You make a form that fits the function, and that's how architecture goes. And so I agree that we have to abide by that.
I mean, I don't know if we really have that flexibility. I would question our ability.
Yeah, and I can totally understand, those are valid points. There is a specific spot in the ordinance that allows for planning commission to grant some flexibility for parking specifically, so there's a lot of standards that the planning commission doesn't have that flexibility, landscape, open space, those types of things, but there is a provision in the ordinance right now, and so I think that that's probably where some of these stemmed from.
Okay.
So if we can close the loop.
Yeah.
At another date.
Sure.
Just wanted to add a further comment in reference to staff parking. We do own a house within 0.4 of a mile that is going to be provided for staff parking, as well as if you look at the design of this particular property, the way the units are set up is that really if you were to rent these as 2-bedroom units, there's only the need for 22 cars on this site. So that was one of the reasons that we decided to design this property the way it was, because of the possibility of a parking issue. But we already pre-planned ahead of the meeting, and we purchased a house over at 4100 Parks Lane in order to handle our staffing issues, as well as at Woodland Creek. There is a beta ride system for anybody that would have to have it. So,
Okay.
and the majority of my staff doesn't drive.
Well, now.
They'll appreciate that in the winter.
Oh, like your other ones?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Any other comments or questions? So we do have,
Yeah, we probably should also address, to be honest with you, I really feel like March 24th is going to be a very packed night, and I'm sorry to say that, but maybe I'd like to hear from staff how they feel about that. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that, do you want?
Both of you can go. I'd like to hear
Yeah.
from both of you.
We did schedule the 24th, meeting when we were putting this agenda together, because this agenda was very heavy, and that's a very big topic. I don't know that you'll have any time to get to any other business, and I
well,
think you're going to say what I was going to say, but go ahead.
No.
Well, there was collective discussion between Sarah and I, as well as Supervisor Friend, that we add this to the 24th meeting. In my conversations with Mr. Werfel, it was discussed that because of the absolute size of the GO-REC project that you guys are going to be looking into heavily that night, that it may run over and not even have the opportunity to get to them. So there was that risk being on that 24th agenda.
Well, yeah, I mean, so it would be a public hearing, so if there are public that come to that meeting on the 24th, and we have a very long discussion on GO-REC, I mean, it's, you know, you're kind of forcing people to kind of have to sit through a pretty long meeting. So-
To that, this was something that you and I were going to discuss. Council wishes to make a presentation that night to reduce the size of public comment for GO-REC.
Okay. Okay.
I need to clarify why I say, so for site plan approvals, this township has a public hearing, but they don't usually have an introduction for a public hearing unless it's a special land use permit. All the other ones tonight were special land use permits. This is just a site plan review. That's the difference, how we understood we would be noticed for the public hearing right now. And that didn't happen. So that's my clarification.
And I would say that because of timing and when the notice went out, so we received this application February 1st to start review and did a completeness review on it. I'd have to look at the exact date for when that was done. But when the notice for the meeting, for tonight's meeting for public hearings, went to the newspaper on the 9th or the 10th following that. So I believe they they turned around pretty quick, actually, and replied to the completeness review. But that was all happening at the same time the noticing was happening for public hearings tonight.
Right, which you gotta get out 15 days prior. Yeah, I understand. Okay. Well, I think we had a previous applicant, we talked and mentioned about moving to the April meeting, so I don't know, it's, in all fairness, I think we envisioned that set aside for GO-REC on the 24th, regardless of how long it was, that we purposely took it off this agenda so that, should it be at length for the planning commission to review and discuss that item, it creates a better opportunity for us, but, so.
I would feel comfortable getting it on the 24th, so long as you reach out to the previous applicants that we just told couldn't be on it too. I just feel terrible about that. I know timing for all of this stuff affects financials by the day, and, I mean, literally right now, by the day. So any time saved is beneficial, but whether we get to it or not, that's a different story.
Well, I don't know, I think maybe we should then discuss about doing 2 meetings a month, quite honestly. I mean, well, I think we have an obligation in some of these instances to take action on it, and I get it, the frustration of the applicants in terms of their timing, but we have, in the case of GO-REC, that's now been, what is that? It was in December, we had a special meeting. It's our second special meeting for them. We had December, January, February, now March, and we're not even the decision body. We're a recommending body. We have a responsibility to that applicant who applied to this to get just a recommendation to go to the township board, who actually makes the decision on GO-REC. So it seems to me that we need to, as much as I want to get things moving, we need to go back to those that are currently in that process, in that pipeline, and undo that clog to get these other ones through. So I think, we talked about creating that March 24th meeting, once we could find a date where everybody could be there, to get GO-REC, to get that moving forward in terms of whatever is going to go with that. So I'm really reluctant to add anything else onto that agenda. But if anybody wants to make a motion,
And I mean, I guess just from a staff perspective and dealing with it in packets, I mean, it'd be something where we'd have to get additional information by like the end of the week.
Yep.
So that we can review it, to get it in a staff report, to get it in your packet, GoRec's information, we already have all of that, and so that's something, we're dealing, we can deal with. They're not submitting new right now.
So this would be a public hearing so was the public hearing scheduled for this, the hotel?
No, it hasn't been published.
Okay. So what would be the deadline for that anyways? That would have to come up, like,
I think this
'Cause it's
if you
15
wanna do
days.
For the 24th.
yeah. It'd have to
Yeah,
come,
do that by the end of the week would be
Okay.
sending the notice to the paper.
okay.
By the 3rd, right?
Yeah, because you're not here Friday, so.
I think it's cumbersome on staff,
15
and
days
it's
is-
cumbersome, and we had another applicant, and the packets take a lot of, that we need to do our due diligence and vet what's in these things, and I think having, I don't know, I really like to take my time on these and go through our books, talk with staff, try to get as much information before I come here, and I just feel like we owe it to GoRec to do that first and foremost. And I can't honestly say that I'm able to do my due diligence in such a rush with 2 more things added to a special meeting that kind of changing the game plan a little bit. But it's up to the group. I'll do what I need to do.
Well, we have to move this forward somehow, so there's,
Just one quick question, with all due respect. I had multiple conversations with Preston, and through Preston, I was told that we were going to be on the 24th meeting, and I understand that's with Preston, but I'm just letting you know the conversations that did take place.
okay, all right, thank you. Anybody want to make a motion on how to move this forward?
Let's go up and down.
I move to table until the April 5th meeting.
Second.
Okay, so actually, if you're going to do that, you probably actually want to schedule a public hearing for April 5th, then, I think is what you want to do.
Yes, sir.
Okay. I mean, it's tabled, but essentially, it's also
And I'll
scheduling.
second the change in the
For
motion.
Okay.
Yeah. And primarily, the reason is that, if the GoRec issue is going to be coming up, and we're going to need time to probably go through the amount of material that I'm sure is going to be equal to, if not larger than what we've seen before, and also the fact that earlier we did have a discussion, and we did tell somebody that they'd be on the April meeting. So I just think we need to be consistent.
Any other discussion on that motion? Okay. So we have a motion to move this to the April 5th meeting with a public hearing. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we are now moving into public comment. Anybody has any comments, please come up to the podium. Okay, not seeing any public comment, we'll close that. Updates from planning commissioners? Any updates?
I just have one thing, not a planning commissioner, but just wanted to add, I think we're probably going to be scheduling a special meeting later in April, because I know there's multiple applications that are going to be coming in. We have a full agenda right now for the beginning of April, so just wanted to let you know, we'll probably be looking at a meeting third week of April to be able to process all the applications we have coming in.
After the Easter holiday.
Yeah, I guess.
I mean, we have a, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I haven't taken a close look at the calendar. I just Just
That's
wanted to
okay, I mean-
mention that we've got a number of additional site plans coming in.
I do agree that when you have this much packed into, I mean, it's a lot. It's a, you know, especially, I mean, you're experienced. I'm learning all kinds of stuff from her, but I mean, it's a lot to take in, so breaking it up a little bit is not a horrible thing.
Okay. Any other updates, comments? Okay, so we have upcoming meeting dates, March 24th, 2022, so that's at 5:30 PM, special meeting. And then regular meeting, April 5th, 2022, is that at 6:30? Regular meeting, scheduled as originally set for the year, okay. Anybody want to make a motion for adjourn?
One question, did you say the next meeting in April is at 6:30, or did you say?
6:30.
6:30,
April's at 6.
April.
Yes, it's because that's how it was originally scheduled for the
exactly.
entirety.
I just wanted-
Yes.
I didn't hear you. Okay,
Right,
thank
we're not making it. Okay, you had a motion to adjourn, correct?
Yes,
Okay, we stand adjourned.
yes.